Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Eric Grant from Sailrite. In today's tutorial video, we're going to show you how to make a Dodger using a Sailrite Dodger Skin Kit that is available from Sailrite. This Dodger is made of Sattler Marine Grade Fabric, and it's available in multiple colors at the Sailrite website.
This Sailrite Dodger Skin Kit comes with all the materials you need to make and install the fabric portion onto an existing or new Dodger Frame Kit that is available from Sailrite. You can make a custom canvas Dodger from start to finish using this tutorial video. Dodger Skin Kits feature zippered tubing sleeves for easy removal and storage, and a fabric tail at the aft edge to prevent water from wicking back under the Dodger. This Dodger Skin Kit also includes the materials required to make a curved or smiley face zipper opening in the high quality clear vinyl window material. Twist lock fasteners and snaps are used to secure the Dodger in place. If the edge of your Dodger comes up to an almost horizontal surface, we'll show you how to make fastener flanges for optimal fastener installation and for a nice clean edge. This Dodger Skin Kit is intended to be used with frames that use rigid support struts, which are included in our Dodger Frame Kits. If you have an existing frame, you can always order the rigid support struts separately at the Sailrite website. To make this Dodger Skin Kit, you will need to first have a Dodger frame mounted on your boat. If you do not have a Dodger frame, you can order one from Sailrite. We also have other tutorial videos showing how to assemble the frame kit. Before we get started, we inspected the old Dodger. Here's some shots of what it looked like. It used to use an adjustable webbing strap to support the frame, but we're going to mount rigid support struts. So we'll be using the old frame from this Dodger, but we will be adding rigid support struts which are available from Sailrite. Then we can go ahead and secure the frame in place. If you'd like to see a video of how to install the rigid support struts, click the link down in the description below. It is important to secure and prep the Dodger frame before patterning. That's what we'll show you now.
Okay, I took a tape measure and I found the center. For us, it's 35 inches, and I marked it on the tubing, and I'll mark this bow as well on the tubing. So that's our center. Next, I'm going to take some strapping tape, and I'm going to put it in the center location on the forward bow, like this, and we'll put it on like that, even though it isn't going to be solid enough to support it completely. I want this to be a level here. And that right there looks to be about right. So we either want it level with this or want it slightly down so that water doesn't run to the back. But usually the bows create a pocket that basically makes like a gutter. So you don't have to worry about water running off the back. I think that's a pretty good spot right there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go across one more time to make sure it's secured well. And then we're going to cut the strapping tape here. And I'm going to remark the center locations because it's getting harder to see them through the tape, but I can still see them. So there's one, and the other one is right there. So I've opened up the hatch cover and went all the way forward with it. We need to support the bow so it doesn't come this way either. So I'm going to use this, the hatch handle, and put strapping tape on it. And then we'll just go to this frame and kind of put a little bit of pressure on it. So we want it to be permanent, and we'll strap it down securely there. So since we have the rigid supports here, this is going to be nice and secure. There's a little bit of bounce to all of them because of the screws, and that's secure. So we're ready for the double-sided tape to go on our bows. We're going to come down here almost to the rigid support, and then we're going to transfer to the top, okay, because this pattern material is rather stiff. So right to the very top of the bow, we're going to put the strapping tape on. The reason I'm putting strapping tape on is the strapping tape will make it easier for us to remove the double-sided tape. If you put double-sided tape straight on stainless steel or even aluminum, you'll find it very difficult to remove, especially in the sun. We have a beautiful cloudy day today, so we don't have to worry as much about that. So I'm going to put strapping tape down the bow as well, because this is not a California Dodger. This is a Dodger that's going to have basically a panel fabric here and a panel fabric here with a window in it that wraps around. No zippers except for the zipper for the pockets and for the smiley face window. So we put strapping tape here. We'll have double-sided tape on top of that. Then we're going to put strapping tape here, and then we're going to transfer to the front here and go all the way to that side.
Now our Dodger frame is ready for patterning of the Dodger Skin Kit.
In this chapter, what we're going to do is we're going to pattern on the frame. Now I know this is the finished Dodger, and you notice that we came straight down here and attached to this fastener, but you could follow the aft bow here and actually come down right down beside this bow, which is back behind here, and attach to a fastener there. So it is your choice. This is just going to show you exactly how to pattern this type of Dodger, but feel free to modify how you end this end panel the way you want. So this is going to be a separate panel, and it's going to have a seam here to join the front panel here, and that seam's going to go like this for us. We're going to go all the way to here, and we're going to stop the fabric right here and come down to this fastener. So this will be this edge here. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on this as well, because we might want to stick the pattern material to this rigid support just to get it in position. I doubt it, but I'd rather be prepared than have to do it later. So we'll come down to here and cut that. And now what I'll do is I'll put double-sided tape on all the strapping tape, because we've done the same thing on the other side of the boat. Now the double-sided tape goes on, and this just holds the pattern material in place right to the top of the bow, and we'll go all the way over here. We'll put it everywhere that we put the strapping tape. I've cut my pattern material to a little bit oversized to fit this. And it's always good to do this on a day that's not windy, and today is excellent for that. You need to go a little bit more to the starboard so that we can come down the deck. Now I know we're not going down this far, but I like to have that much material, so I'm going to cut off this excess. Just makes it easier. And we'll throw that aside. Okay, so now I'll fold this up, and we're going to start removing some of this transfer paper, revealing the double-sided tape. Okay, we're just going to get her down so it looks nice and neat and there are no extra wrinkles. We're going to keep pulling this transfer paper off. Okay, so we want this to be nice and tight. Nice thing is you can peel it up. See how I'm getting it super taut, but I don't want any wrinkles in it. So I just have to keep doing this until I'm happy with exactly the way it looks. And so far it's looking good over here. So we're just going to continue doing that over here on the starboard side. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Now, just in case the wind picks up, I'm going to cut off a lot of this excess, leaving obviously enough that I could make modifications if I want to. And remember, we're going to go, this seam's going to come down here like that, so I don't want to cut off more than that amount. So I'm going to do like 2 inches outside of that, kind of like right up there, and that should come down like that, and I still have plenty of material. So we're going to trim this to size. I'm going to go straight down here. We'll do the same thing on the starboard side. So back here, we're going to have our pocket probably stop someplace over here, though our zipper's probably only going to go to here so I can make sure I don't put wrinkles in the top, which often happens. But we're going to mark with dashes, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my marks as soon as I get past this curve to 45 degrees. So because our seam is going to fall basically on the 45-degree line, that's what you want to think about. So notice how my marker is kind of now at 45 degrees. I do dashes because it's easier than doing a straight line. And we'll go do this exact same thing all the way to the starboard side. Now over here, so we're going to go dash, dash, dash. And then we're going to transfer to 45 degrees once we get past this bow or the curve, and that would be right here all the way down like that. Okay, so what I'm planning to do is to take this and go basically carry it all the way to this locale where this fastener is. So the fabric's going to stop like this. So I'm going to go ahead and put a mark here indicating that we're going to stop there, and then we'll carry this way all the way to the mark with an arrow. That way I know where that goes. Let's see, so that'll be a single panel, and then this will come up here, and this will basically be our skirt edge. So I'll write skirt like that, because that's basically where the fabric will stop and come back down. And we probably just want to sight down and go like that. We can join those two lines down here, and that should have that panel done. Now at the center location, we need to mark where the center is, so I can see the line through here. And so I'll put a C here. This is pout, or port out, and that's starboard, and we need to mark the center line there and put south over there on that side. We don't want to take this pattern material off because we're going to have to use it to reference the other one. I am going to put double-sided tape, but not on top of my marks, because the double-sided tape will actually remove the marker marks. So notice that I'm right behind it. And we don't have to do it on that side, we just have to do it along this front side over here. I'm going to be as close as I can to the marks without staying over the top of them. And we're going to go all the way to here and break the tape like that. And we're going to go and start at the center and do it over there on the starboard side as well. We have lift the dot fasteners here that was used for the old Dodger. That one's broken down there, but we still have to, we'll replace it. Now you can see we put strapping tape and the double-sided tape directly on top of any fasteners if you have any. And if you don't have fasteners, you just assume where the fasteners would go. So the reason we do that is we want the pattern material to be crisp to the fastener. There's a fastener that's missing right here. Notice I went over the top of it. We'll replace that one. Then we come up here and we take almost a 90-degree turn here. We'll probably put a flap here and maybe a flap here just to keep this nice and taut. We'll show you how to do that later on. But you can see here we have lift the dots, and I went right over the top of them. Okay, so it's nice if you have a fastener on a vertical surface like this, or this is almost vertical, that's definitely vertical. These flat surfaces, it's a little bit harder, and that's why you have to build a flange for it, which we'll show later on. Here, I put double-sided tape up here because we obviously have lines that come through over top of this traveler. Then on the awning track, you can see I put double-sided tape right on top of the awning track, and we can pattern directly to that. So we'll know exactly where that is. So we also put double-sided tape on top of our pattern up here, not on top of the dash lines, because sometimes it removes the marks after you remove the double-sided tape. But that should give us a good surface for patterning. We did the same thing on the starboard side as well. I'm going to remove the transfer paper for a few feet on both the starboard and port from the center position. And I have my pattern material folded in half, and unfortunately the wind is picked up, which is going to make this job a little bit more difficult. It's already obviously been cut to size. Approximate size, it's oversized. You want it to be oversized. We're going to start at the center. And I'm might have to move it around a little bit, but basically I marked kind of the center of this, so I'm just going to put it on that center line. We can remark that if it turns out not to be the exact center, which is slightly off now. That was just the center of my pattern. And I'm going to put it down over here. We'll kind of just check to make sure that we have enough pattern material. Looks like I'm going to have to go in more, like that, to make it around that turn. So let's go over here and check to see if we have enough material. Yeah, it looks like we're going to be good. So I'm going to peel this off. This isn't going to be the final position, but it will be semi-close. Yeah, we're going to have to go up a little bit more, as you can see. Maybe even more. Well, maybe not, because it's coming down here. So we might actually be okay there. So let's try for that. We can always tape pieces together if we need to, but we're just trying to get the general position now. So now I'll go to the starboard side and do the same thing, and then we'll show you what we do. Come on. Okay, so we're going to start from the center here, and we're going to base down to here. So I'm going to remove the double-sided tape. I don't know if I made a break in it. I don't think I did. I should have done that. So I just cut it right here so I can remove the transfer paper from the awning track section. We'll take that off to there. And unfortunately it's sticking to my strapping tape, which is not necessarily good. I probably should have put strapping tape on top of that to keep it from happening. I think I'm gonna have to. It's sticking way too much. Okay, so now I've got tape on top of the strapping tape. It's not gonna stick to that anymore. So we're gonna position this center. It looks like I'm gonna have to pull some more of that up because it's got slack right there. But let's get this down first, so it's kind of nice. It's just a matter of being patient and working this all out, and getting it nice and wrinkle free. Okay, so that's down. So now I need to come up here and see how I'm kind of pulling this out to make this taut. Okay, that's pretty good right there. Let's work this direction. So I got that looking good there. Sometimes you have to cut slits to get by obstacles like this, but let's see if we can do it without doing that. I've got double-sided tape above the traveler, so I'm going to stick it down to that locale. Oops, I just got to peel off the transfer paper. I was like, why is it not sticking? Well, there we go. I'm going to peel it off all the way past these fasteners to this corner. So I'm trying to find a crisp spot that pulls out the wrinkles and it has a nice look. That's probably pretty good right there. Now this is a flap down here for these fasteners, so I'm going to cut some slits going not too deep to allow it to go around some of these obstacles. I'd like to not slit into the actual area where I'm going to be using the material. So you can see I'm on top of those fasteners, and that doesn't look too bad. It's got a few little wrinkles here, but hopefully we can work those out. Now I've got some strange things going on here, but I think it's good enough that I can get a good mark of where it goes, because this is basically an opening here. So let's peel this off. So I'm going to baste it to the deck here. We'll have a flange here to pull this out. Take off some more transfer paper. That's looking pretty good. Now we got to work with this up here. And pull this fairly taut. Still got some things going on here, but I think we can work it out. Okay, let me come over here, put my knee down, take off that. So there's a fastener over here that's not here because it's broken off. We'll fix that. I don't like all these wrinkles, so we're gonna have to do something about that. But I'd rather, oh, I know what the issue is. I need to cut slits here. So the issue is that there's shape here, and I need to cut a slit all the way to where our material is, and watch what'll happen. I'll just cut a few of these at random locations where I think there's just too much wrinkles happening. About there, probably up here too. Okay, so now let's see if that resolves that. Probably will. Oh yeah, look at this. Look at that. Nice. So let's see if I can work some of these out with doing the same thing. You get the point. Allows the fabric to relax. We can pull it taut to that fastener. She looks good up here. Maybe even a little slit here. Yeah, look at that puppy. Right here needs one too. But I think it's actually acceptable right here. There's some tape on my scissors and it's not cutting very well at the end. Look at that. There's a hard spot there because there's so much material. So go like that. Nice. Okay, I'm going to work a little bit on this area to get this out. When I'm done doing that, I'll show you what I did. But basically, I think it's just a few little relief slits and then reworking the pattern material. Okay, so we have a nice crisp line at the deck, and I'm just going to use my marker. We'll straighten this out at the loft table if it's a little bit crooked, but it should be nice and straight like this. So this is the edge of the deck. We'll have some flanges on this later. I'm going to go all the way to here, and here's a fastener right here, and we are right over the top of it. So we'll put a big thing there and put an F there for fastener. Over here we have these fasteners that are going to go in, and I have the pattern material resting right on top of them, so I'm going to put a large circle there, and this one's a little bit down from it, but it's should be good like that. So we need this to be a flange, and the flange is going to come basically down like this, so right there at that edge and right here at this edge, so that we have plenty of room for those fasteners. So it'll probably we'll go back to the loft table and show you exactly how that works. Now, to know exactly where the center line of the fasteners is, I'm going to go like this, basically, hopefully right beside them. If I have to push down a little bit, I will. That one should go there. That one should be about there. And that one should be about there. So that's general location. We're not going to put these fasteners in at the loft table. That's for darn sure. Now here we have the opening for the lines. And so what I'm going to do is, I don't need to go all the way up to this rail, but I just want to trace the rail right now. So you can see I'm on the Traveler right now. Up. We'll probably come down from that because there's no reason to have a big hole. So I'll put some arrows here. This is port out. Okay. And now we have the awning track, which is here. And I'm going to put a line on here to indicate the end of the awning track, and we'll do AT for awning track. And we're going to mark right on the groove, in other words, the opening for the awning rope, all the way to the other side. Okay. Now, let's see what we got here. Okay, so this is going to transfer up to that awning rope somehow, but we're going to probably add some fabric. That's the flange. I might want to mark flange like that. We're going to probably have a flange here because this is going to have to pull out. So I'm just going to do something like this, which will indicate some sort of a flange. Flange. Okay, now we got to go down here, and we've got this fastener here that is gone, but I'm going to mark it with this and put an F on that. And we're going to have our pattern basically come up like this. I'm going to do dash lines because this doesn't have to be perfect here. We just want to follow it all the way to this one. Now you may be saying, don't you need extra fabric? Yes, we definitely need extra fabric. So we'll come outside of this, but these lines will be for a reference. Okay, since this has to have extra fabric, obviously, for the fastener, so we'll probably come down here and have extra fabric go that direction. But here I want it to be right up against the deck and use flanges, since this is not on the vertical, it's almost horizontal. I really probably could come, no, let's put a flap here. So I'm going to put some sort of flap here. We might go all the way across, and a third one here, okay, like that. And that way we can hold this down to the deck and install fasteners. I'll center them, obviously. And here we're going to add extra fabric. So we'll just do something like that to indicate that extra fabric needs to be added. So now we go up to the top here. And what we want to do is we want to use the the dashes we put on this, because you can see through this, and mark directly on top of them. And we have an arrow here. So that arrow is going to go down like that. I'm going to write right on top of that. We have this mark that we made over here. This is where we were going to end it. So right about there. And obviously we'll come down to this flap in that regard. And that one is basically right there. We'll just transfer that down to there. So we'll have a straight line going here. This is the seam going to go that direction. This will be the panel that joins to that panel. So we're going to do this all along the top here. And we're also going to mark the center position. So we're going to cross this out, and we're going to do the center position here and put a C here and a C here. Out for starboard out, and we'll continue marking just like we did before on the port side. I forgot to mention that you want to cut slits like this, sometimes all the way to your fasteners, and that allows the fabric to relax at obstacles like that. We did that at other spots, but I wanted to show you because we didn't show exactly this when we were doing the patterning up here. The past Dodger had a window that stopped at this fastener here. We're going to go out to the second fastener just to get a little bit more visibility. So I'm going to have my window stop about there. We want to go higher up. I mean, this bow is actually higher than their old Bimini, so it'll be a couple inches down from there. And then obviously will probably be a couple inches up from the awning track. So that's the only window that we're going to do, is basically the same thing on the other side. Here, if you wanted to, I would probably leave this to be canvas and not have the window wrap around, and if you wanted to put another window in, you could do it here. We might do that after we're done.
Later on, we do decide to put a window in the side, as you can see here. We will cover that in a separate chapter near the end of this video.
Okay, it's time to remove our pattern, and we want to remove the double-sided tape and the strapping tape as well. You really shouldn't leave that on the deck for too long, especially in high heat situations. So we're going to remove this, and we're going to remove the strapping tape and the double-sided tape everywhere, and we're going to go back in to fabricate it.
We'll use the top portion of our pattern to cut the canvas top.
All right, we have our pattern on the table, and I also put my Sattler Marine Grade Fabric down. But if you remember right, this is the edge that is in the cockpit. This is the edge that's going to have the window up there. So here's where we basically ended the piece. And if you remember right, we're going to have a seam go all the way to here. So I have a line here and here where we wanted it to come down, so I'm going to intersect those lines. You could use a marker for this, but I'm just using the scribe ball because it marks on the material as well. And then these dash marks come down and intersect with that. Now don't follow this, basically follow these dash marks. So they're the more important ones. So I'm right on this, so we'll just go like that, right to there. And now this panel can be joined straight to that panel. To mark a 1/2 inch seam allowance, because we need to add on the outside. Now this one's easy because this is just a straight line that we struck. So this is our cut line. But for the dashes, what I do is I use the clear acrylic ruler and I make sure that my dashes are on the 1/2 inch mark. And then I mark on those as long as it's over those 1/2 inch marks, like that. I'm on the mark there. But this takes a curve, so you've got to be careful not to mark where it's not on top. So here it's on top. And then let's see, right here, I move my ruler and it's on top here. So we just do this around the entire perimeter. And we're going to do a 1/2 inch not only here, but also over here as well. Now I know this takes a sharp turn like this, but this is where we had our rigid support come down. So this will still work. And we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. We're going to do the same thing on the starboard side as we did on this port side. So now we're going to cut on the right on top of these lines. These are 1/2 inch lines. I'm not cutting the Sattler fabric underneath. So we're going to cut on this, and then we're going to follow this curve up here, and we're going to cut on this one in the same manner, cutting out this entire panel. So we have pout facing up, pattern materials facing up. If this were a yacht master, this would be the outside surface that is facing up. The urethane coating would be on the underside, but this is Sattler Marine Grade acrylic fabric. I have enough pattern material covering all the way to the floor down here, so I'm fine. We're going to use a hot knife and cut this out. So this is the Sailrite Edge hot knife. It's a battery operated one. We also have one that's corded that's a little bit less money. And this is the precision cutting foot and blade. And I don't have to use a cutting glass with this. And I can actually, if I'm careful, I can do this without even marking the fabric. I can just go right alongside the pattern material with this, and this seals the edge of the fabric. So we're going to cut this out completely using this tool. If you don't have this foot, you'll use the R blade, and you'll have to have a tempered cutting glass on the underside to prevent damage to the tabletop.
We'll be using that top to create the appropriate shape for the aft zippered pocket that's next.
Okay, so we have our panel. This is the aft edge, some scrap, and I need at least 7 or 8 inches on the underside of excess, and I have plenty. And I need to go all the way to where the curve stops. Now, I'm going to just mark this. We're going to be putting fasteners in here, but we're going to follow this edge all the way to that point, and we're going to probably start our zipper right here. So if you notice here, this is not straight, but it becomes more curved as it reaches here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my zipper right about here. There's no right or wrong spot. I was going to do it here, but I've changed it. And we're going to mark this all the way to the other side, and we're going to measure from that spot so that it's the same on the other side from the center. And this is 33 inches to the center. So we'll mark the other end in the same manner. And I do want to mark this as well, like that. So here's 33 inches over here, so we'll mark both here and here. And I also mark the center position here, and we'll just continue to scribe the fabric all the way to this corner. Aft at the center point, and I marked S for south, close to 4 inches, at least 4 inches in there, and then P over here for port. So I want to go 1 inch beyond this so I can do a single hem here. And then we're going to cut with a hot knife along this edge, and then we're going to use our canvas patterning ruler to mark along this 4 inches back, and we'll cut that end out as well. Okay, remember here at the end we're going to go 1 inch for a hem, and I'm just going to eyeball this to go up. Obviously this isn't perpendicular with that edge, but we're just going to go up at least 4 inches there. And then we're going to take our canvas patterning ruler at 4 inches again, and I won't be able to pattern off that edge because I'm out of fabric, but I will just do this along all the edges to make sure that we're following that shape exactly. And for this one, since I was short, I'll just do it by eye right there. And we're going to cut this out with a hot knife after we get all the way to the other end. This is our aft pocket that we just cut out, and I've laid some more Sattler fabric on the underside, scrap stuff. And I want to reinforce this area where a snap will go. If we stop the zipper here, then we get less wrinkles in the top, and the wrinkles are transferred to the pocket. So I'm going to go a little bit past where our zippers are going to stop, and we're just going to trace this, and we're going to cut this out. Just one layer is all we really need, all the way to here, which is about that location there. And I'm going to cut this out, but I do want to take away a little bit more than a ½ inch from this edge, because we're going to hem this over on this edge, a ½ inch. So you can see that I'm a little teeny bit more than a ½ inch, and I'm just kind of eyeballing it. So I'm not going to cut there, I'm going to cut here, and we're going to do the same thing to the other end, which is the starboard end. Okay, this is P for port. This is actually going to be the inside. In other words, it's going to be flipped around like this, and it's going to be attached to the cover so that this is up against the top. So that means that it's on the right direction the way we have it, and this is going to be the underside of the pocket, which means this goes on top of this with our P and our markings up like that. And it's going to go down from this edge. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on this. This is a double-sided tape that's included in the Dodger kits. It's an acrylic glue. It is not a rubber-based glue, so it doesn't yellow, and it sticks very, very well. If you used a light fabric and you used a different double-sided tape, it would yellow and you'd see it. So we're going to peel off the transfer paper, just put 2 rows on it like that, and then we're going to baste it like this, right up to that edge. And that gets rid of our mark for where the zipper's going to stop, which is actually the zipper's going to go here. So I'm just going to mark it like this, kind of to indicate where the zipper stops. We'll do the same thing over there. Now we put double-sided tape here. We go along this inner edge here like this, not this edge right here. And we put the double-sided tape all along this edge, all the way to the end. Okay, this is going to be a ½ inch hem, and we want to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to adhere it down, or something heavy that you can do the same operation with. But I highly recommend this tool if you're making Dodgers and Biminis. I've peeled off the double-sided tape, and we want to fold this to approximately a ½ inch. Now I'm not going to measure it, but I'm going to do it by eye. If you'd like to measure before you peel off the transfer paper and mark a line at 1 inch, then you can just fold to that line, which would create a ½ inch hem. This is a single hem, and we're going to do this all the way down the side, this side. Be sure that you crease it well and cause it to stick well using the canvas patterning ruler, Sailrite canvas patterning ruler, as you do it, because it will want to come unbasted. This zipper will technically be too long for almost all your applications, and we intend it to be that way. It comes in the kit. We're going to separate the two halves. And I'm going to take the part that has the starter post, not the starter box. So we're going to set the starter box aside. And it goes on. You can have it start either on a port or starboard side. It doesn't really matter, but we're going to put it on the pocket. And so I'm going to put double-sided tape on this side. Now this time I'm going to use the 1/4 inch seam stick that comes in the kit. That way it doesn't get close to the zipper's teeth. And we're going to put it really close to the raw edge of the flange all the way down its length. Now I know it's too long. You might want to just measure it and put it down where you need it, because we are going to be cutting off the excess at the end, but never cut off the end with the starter post or the starter box. I'm going to peel off the transfer paper by at least a foot or so. We're going to put this on starting at this area that we indicated, which is pretty much right where the curve becomes more predominant. And we're going to baste it on. Now if you've done it right, it really should be right along the edge that you hemmed. So this edge is right up against it. But before we're done, I'm going to flip it over and we're going to look to make sure that the zipper is on consistently all the way down the side, because it just looks better. So we're going to baste it on all the way to that other end, and I'll show you what we do when we get there. Okay, this is the binding that comes in the kit, and I'm going to cut a piece that's 2 inches with a hot knife. Because I'm using this special foot, I don't have to have glass underneath it, and this will seal the edges. We're going to use this as a stop. So this is where I want the zipper to stop, so I'm going to cut it just so that it's a teeny bit longer than that, like that. Okay, then we're going to put double-sided tape on this side of the binding, and we're going to use the wider double-sided tape that comes in the kit. You may want to put 2 strips down this just so it doesn't move. Okay, if it's hanging over the edge, I just fold it back like that. So I'm going to put it on so that it's flush with this bottom edge over here, and then I'm going to fold it over like this, and this creates a beautiful stop. I'm going to trim this off. This is just a dog ear, and I really want to start sewing here, and then we'll sew over here to secure the zipper. But I want to create that 1 inch hem, and this will make a big dog ear over here. Don't worry about that. We're going to take a hot knife and trim that off. So I'm going to leave it up so that I can see what I'm doing. I'm also going to use the outside right of the center foot with my needle in the right position. So we're going to get really close to that edge. And then I'm going to do some reversing here. And we're going to sew up this edge until I get to the spot where I want to make a pivot, which is right about there. Needle's still in the fabric, and I can just lift my foot and pivot around. And now I'm going to sew down this side. Okay, that secures this hem, and then eventually we're going to get to the zipper and make sure it stays basted down. Okay, so now I'm to the zipper, and I'm just going to keep this right side of the foot up against the teeth. So I want to do some reversing over this to secure it well, like that. And then we're just going to sew down this length and make sure that it stays basted where we had it before. You can see that the right side of the presser foot is up against the teeth now. And just take your time doing this. We're coming to the stop here, and I want to make sure it's folded, so I'm kind of holding it. So we sew through it, and then we'll do some reversing over top of it. Like that, pretty heavy reversing, and then we'll sew all the way to the end. But before we get to the end, we need to create that hem yet again. So I'm just going to take the fabric and I'm going to fold it over so that it's roughly one inch or so. It doesn't have to be exact here. And then we'll pivot on that needle and sew down this side. And then I will do reversing right there, and we're done. This one, let's see, it will not be probably. So yeah, see, it's on the wrong side. No problem. This is the one that you almost always have to cut short. So all I need to do is just come up here to the stop and chop it off. Obviously we have to chop off more than that. Take that off, and then all I do is put it on so that this is on the other side. And now it's a locking zipper, so it doesn't move unless you undo the lock. Now just make sure that matches up with the box again, which it does, and zip it on. Once I get to the other end, I'm going to cut it so that it matches the other end. Right here, and I'm going to do just a little bit right there. I think is about a good match. Yeah, and one more tooth. There we go. We'll put a stop there later on.
We'll be creating a hang-down tail for the aft edge of the Dodger now.
I have the top, and this is the aft side, and we want our tail to basically end at approximately this location. So I'm going to use a soft tape measure. I want the tail to be 10 inches longer than this measurement, but I'm only going to go to the halfway point because the other side should be almost the same. So I get 43 inches, so multiply that times 2, that's 86 inches. 96 inches is what I'm going to cut for my hang-down tail. So to make our hang-down tail, we need to cut it to 6 inches wide, and the clear acrylic rule is made for hang-down tails. Not really. Okay, so, but it is, because it's 6 inches wide. This is the factory edge, so I don't have to worry about cutting that edge. So we're just going to go down here, and we're going to just use this and make it 6 inches wide to 96 inches in length. And after that's done, then we'll cut it out with a hot knife. We don't have to worry about the factory edge because it's sealed. Now what we want to do with the hang-down tail is fold it in half, and you can put double-sided tape here, but what I like to do is I like to just crease it well, and we are going to take it and put a tacking stitch on this raw edge. So I'm going to do this. You can also do this with the edge of a sharp table. Just fold it like this and hold it so that it's nice and firm, and crease it like that all the way down its length. This is a tacking stitch, so all it does is just basically keep it together, and I'm doing it really close to the raw edge, almost a 1/16 inch away, because I'm never going to see this stitch after we're done. So we're just going to go down this side, securing the raw edges nicely. So the hang-down tail would go along this edge here, but it's really best, since we have, we're going to have a binding edge, it's best to determine the exact length of this so that we can bind it before we sew it to the top, because the binding is going to end right here. So to do that, I'm going to take this edge that we sewed, and we're going to put it over here, and we're going to use these clips that are awesome. We just discovered these, and we're going to clip it all the way down here so we know exactly the length that it needs to be before we even do our binding. So just again randomly every foot to 24 inches all the way down to that end. I'll show you what we do when we get there. Since there's curve in this, you just can't measure. Well, you could measure it if you use a soft tape measure, but this works quite well. I'm following the curve and clipping. So the end of it is right there, basically at that location. It wouldn't matter if you're off a few inches anyway. So I'm going to just put a mark right there, and we know this length, and then we're going to unclip this. Okay, so now I'm just going to take some tape, and we're going to do this on the fold. So not the side that's sewing. We're going to make this so that it's a gentle curve like this, so that it can easily be bound without having to make a 90-degree turn and cut, so we can actually follow that nicely. So we're going to do that on the other end where we marked the length. We're going to cut it to size on that end and then do the exact same thing here. I have my 1-inch swing away binder mounted on my Ultrafeed LSZ. You can also do this with the LS, which is a straight stitch only machine. And we're going to swing it over, and we need to set where the needle is penetrating. It looks like I need to go to the right, but is it too far to the right? Let's find out by just sewing a little bit. It's a little bit close, too far in that edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release this screw and I'm going to move it this way. So my needle is in the right position. Now let's check it out and see what we got. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to start here at, let's see, I need to start it, I can just flip this over. I need to start here at this end and I'll just let it hang off the edge, and I want to do a little bit of reversing here. So we're doing a 6mm straight stitch, do some reversing there. And then I want to push this in at the curve. So I'm going to push right here. Even if you get a little bubble like this, that's fine. Just want to make sure that you hit that curve. And you want to pay attention to the exiting point of the binder, not the point out here, because this is actually canted out to keep this from kinking. So I'm looking at this exiting point right here, making sure the fabric is pushed well up into the fold of the binding. And we'll sew all the way down to the other end and do some reversing there, just like we did at the beginning.
In this chapter, we're going to sew the tail and pocket to the aft edge.
We'll just touch these ends a little bit with a hot knife and cut them off if they're long. So now we're ready to baste it to the top. Now we want the pout and spout facing up, which it is, and we want to put double-sided tape from here all the way to the other end. This is the 3/8 inch width double-sided tape that you want to put on there, which is back here. So we need to follow that contour and put it very, very close to this raw edge. Don't get it too far in, otherwise you might see the double-sided tape after your stitch, your primary stitch and top stitch are done. Okay, and then we're going to use the canvas, Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to adhere it down well. And I'm also going to cut here at the center because I need to know where my center notch is. I'm going to make a small triangle there so that I know where that is. Beautiful. Now we're going to take this tail and we're going to flip it like this and baste it on so that the edge without the binding is against this edge. And it's a good idea to use clips, and I do highly recommend these. I've already said that. They are super powerful and super grippy. So at the curves, it's more important than it is at the straightaways, but even at the straightaways, I'm going to put it about every 12 to 16 inches apart just to make sure it stays bound. Okay, we're going to do this all the way to the other end. So here's our pocket, and if you've done it right, you should flip it so the zipper is facing down, the hems are facing up, and you should see P and port. And you do, so we are perfectly good. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it back so that this is up, and I'm going to put double-sided tape all along this edge, very close to the raw edge, like we did on the top, okay, because this is going to be bound down to the tail. Okay, I know we clipped this all in place, and now we have to remove the clips because this has to go along this edge. But these go, yeah, right to here. So we want to start in the center. Now I already clipped this tail so that I could see where it was. Obviously right underneath it was the center point. And I also clipped this right here. You can see the little triangle. So I'm going to peel off the transferred paper all the way to that middle position because we want to start from the middle. We don't know exactly where it's going to end up on the left or port or starboard side. That's why we start at the middle. So right here I'm at the middle point, and I want to put this down so that the zipper is up, hems are up now. We're right on that center mark, and we'll baste either to the left or to the right, doesn't really matter. I'll remove the clips as I get to them, and then I'll re-clip it as I baste it down. Okay, so it should match up this edge perfectly. Make sure it does. It's nice. There is some shape here, so it won't want to stay flat. It'll want to curl up a little bit. That's normal. And that's kind of why we use those clips too. So I'm trying to pull a little bit over to the side a little bit to get it there. That's just perfect. It's perfect enough, I should say. And then we're going to clip it here, and then we're going to baste obviously that other side in the same manner. I have my needle in center position, and I put the magnetic guide on at a 1/2 inch, and so we're just going to start sewing here. I moved my first clip, and this is going to be a semi-flat filled seam once we're done. So I'm just going to bury the needle here. We'll do a little bit of reversing here. We're going to sew a 1/2 inch from the edge, Okay. And as we get to each one of the clips, we're just going to remove the clips, and it'll stay basted because these clips are so aggressive. So we're just going to follow this. There's shape here, so it wants to curl a little bit. Don't worry if you're slightly off like that. I mean, that's not much at all. Won't make much difference at all. Okay, we're going to sew all the way to the other end, and we'll do reversing there as well, and then we're going to do a top stitch. Now to do the top stitch, what I want to do is I want to fold this all out, and we're going to put the seam allowance, which is here, to the top. Okay, so we're going to sew in the top, not in the tail. And sometimes it's best to actually bring it out and create a crease. In other words, I'm putting my fingers underneath there, and I'm actually creasing it out on that first stitch. When I get to the straightaway, sometimes you actually just folding it like this before you sew can make this job a little bit easier. So we're going to do this all the way down its length. I'm going to turn down the Worker Bee Power Pack system to almost minimal speed because I want this stitch to look beautiful, and that'll just help me have full control. So I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to use probably, the needle's going to be in center position. I'm going to use the right side of the foot, and we're going to sew in that seam allowance on the underside. So the first stitch, I'll just roll it by hand, and I will do some reversing here, but not long reversing, just kind of heavy reversing. There's a lot of thickness here. So if you get a skip stitch, it'll just be on the end only. Okay, so splay it left and right, and take your time and follow that seam. Okay, so this is our top stitch. When you stop, bury your needle and make adjustments with your needle buried so you don't lose your spot. Sometimes you want to kick your tail up like this, so that makes it easier to sew this, and then just keep sewing. Okay, we're going to sew all the way to the other end. Make sure the seam allowance is, you're sewing into it. I can feel it, so you want to make sure that's going the right direction while you're doing this. This pocket is now going to be, this is the underside of the Dodger, going to be folded back like that and basted and sewn down. So I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas and upholstery, and we're going to put it on this side of the zipper flange all the way down. Now on the end we need to put another stop, and I just cut 2 inches of the 1 inch binding that's included and put double-sided tape on both sides like we did before, and we'll fold it over the teeth, making sure it matches up with the other side, like that. Okay, so now we'll peel this off, and we'll start kind of in the center is usually where I like to start, and you want it to sit flat. There's no excess material that's going to be drawn into here, so basically fold it like that. And we are going to mark this as well because this sometimes doesn't stay basted. Now when you get to the shape on the ends, sometimes what I do is I just let this tail fold up like this and pull it like that and baste it down because we want this to be flat. So see there's shape here. So I try to flatten it all out as best as possible. This takes a slight curve even though it's in the straighter section. And then once that's done, we will mark it as well. So let's just make sure it stays down nicely everywhere, and I'll baste it down. And sometimes I'll even put little match-up marks just to make sure that I don't stretch anything. So like every 24 inches or so, I'll do that, or 12 inches. Doesn't really matter. Because this slider makes it difficult to follow the line, what I did is I just basically extended the line following the same angle that this is, so that way when I get to this I can actually just baste it down according to that line. We'll move the slider when we get to the sewing machine. So let's take it over and sew it. I'm going to move the needle to the right to get closer to those teeth, and we're right next to the starter box, which is going to make it a little bit difficult to get close to it. I'm going to try to get as close as I can. And we're going to do some reversing here at the end. And then I'm just going to run my foot up against the zipper's teeth as I sew here. I'm going to make sure everything stays exactly where we had it basted. And I've got the worker bee power pack turned down pretty low here so that I get a good nice stitch here in the right spot. We'll show you what we do when we get to the slider. I turned up the worker bee just so I could do this a little bit quicker because it was really going slow there, and I think it's pretty easy since I have a guide. Okay, we're getting close to that slider. I'm going to bury my needle in the assembly and then raise my presser feet, and I'm going to slide the slider back past the presser feet. There we go. And then we're going to base this down. That's why that line can be helpful, because everything moved a little bit when I did that. So I'm going to use that line as my guide here and make sure everything is nice and straight. Make sure this is down flat. There we go. And lower the foot. Don't forget to do that. And then we'll do some reversing in this, making sure that we stay in that assembly. Okay, we're done.
Next up, we'll pattern and cut the front canvas panel.
This is my top panel that I've already cut out, and we've added the seam allowance to it. And I'm going to lay it onto the forward panel. This is the starboard end. Remember, we have those arrows that are directly on top of itself, and we want to match up the dot line. Now remember, this isn't going to sit flat because it's got shape in it, so it's not going to go all the way against the dotted lines, but here at the corner it can. Then we're going to put a sandbag on this to hold it in position right where we want it. Now, if we follow this line straight down that we have on this pattern, it's way outside this fastener, and we really only need to be about 1.5 inches outside that fastener. Now we do have to intersect that line, but it's okay to create some shape here. So I want to be about 1.5 inches away from that fastener, so I have plenty of material, and I want to intersect this line and draw past that fastener. Okay, I taped on another piece of pattern material because we were a little bit shy right here. Okay, so here I want to put this underneath, and I want this, the line that we struck on this, I want the clear acrylic ruler right beside it. Okay, so then we lift this up and we extend this line to there. Now we still have to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance out here and obviously out here. So this doesn't actually have a seam here, but we're going to add it because if you measure from the fastener to the line, I'm less than 1 inch. So a 1/2 inch seam allowance, even though it doesn't have it, will actually be good here. So even though we're not going to join a panel to this section, we're still going to go out a 1/2 inch so that we can get further away from that fastener. And we'll do the same thing to the port side. Okay, so we did the same thing here on the port side, and now let's concentrate on this edge. Okay, remember we put a line right here from the middle of the fasteners. So we're going to add 1.5 inches just to be safe from the fasteners. So I'm on 1.5 inches right in the middle of the fasteners, and we're going to strike a line here. Now this line is not going to have any seam allowance added to it. Okay, so that goes like that, and yeah, this one is still going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance because it'll put it out here, which is good. So this edge is going to be right up against the deck. Remember, we patterned it right to the deck, and we were going to put a flange on this so that because the fasteners are not vertical, they're almost horizontal. We could put 3 separate flanges on it, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a single flange going that whole distance from here to here, and we'll work on that later on. So I don't need to add any fabric there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right here on this line, and we'll show that in a little bit. Now let's concentrate on this. Okay, so now I realize that these arrows I put on the boat, they're actually going the wrong way. They really should be going out here if we wanted to add fabric. So I was wrong on that. You probably caught me on that. Now what we need to do is, this is the 2 fasteners, and we need to draw a line going to our awning track over here that is pleasing. Now I don't want the fabric to stop at the awning track. I'd like my fabric to be, again, another 1.5 inches or so from that awning track, which would put it right there. So if I put the edge of the fabric there at the awning track, then that will be hidden. So what I'm going to do is remember we wanted to drop this down just a little bit. I'm just going to fair this by eye and make sure if there are any fasteners, you know, I don't want to be an inch or an inch and a half away from them. Here's some fasteners here. We're just going to continue this up to make it a nice fair line until we run into this, and I'll curve it a little bit here. Okay, now we're going to draw a line at the awning track and just use it as a reference. We're just going to fair it up here, but it definitely has some shape in it. It's not a straight line, it has a little bit of a curve. So I'm gonna strike a line following that curve and moving my clear acrylic ruler so I'm on 1.5 inches as I mark. So here it's curving downward like that. And we'll go all the way over to here. So this is the 1.5 inch line down from this fastener, and this is where our flange is going to be. I'm going to take off these marks with a permanent marker on our pattern material, and I'm using just a 3M adhesive remover. And what I want to do is I want to fair this in. So the flange is going to start right here at this arrow we've decided. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and just make this look good with a nice pleasing shape that I can easily bind with binding. So my binding can go here, and then it can go up here, and then we'll build those flanges later on. And we'll do the same thing at the starboard side here with a little bit of a curve. Port side. Okay, now we're ready for seam allowance before we cut. No seam allowance here, no seam allowance anywhere on the bottom edge. Seam allowance here, even though there is no seam, we're going to add it because we're pretty close to that fastener, so we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. This one's pretty easy because it's a totally straight line. So I'm just going to go with my clear acrylic ruler, boom, like that. Okay, now, oops, it didn't mark very well, but we'll mark it later. Yeah, there we go. Here, this is a straight line here, but it's going to curve at the top, and we need to follow that curve. So while I'm on the straight line, I'm going to just mark it a 1/2 inch from there. And now, let's talk about these dash marks. We basically showed this already, but what you want is you want your clear acrylic ruler on the marks at a 1/2 inch, and then you want to move the ruler as you pattern. After you're done with your 1/2 inch seam allowance that you drew in, check to make sure that if it bows in, it's not supposed to. So here, if I put a straight edge to this, you can see it bows in. No way it does that. We know that that's not true. So I'm going to fair this off like that. So you want to look down. If bowing out makes total sense, bowing in would cause probably a hard spot or wrinkles. So if you see that, correct it before you cut. Everything else looks pretty good. Now we just cut on our lines that we struck. This is the 1/2 inch seam allowance where there is no seam. And we will cut on, let's just cut all the way across here, that line there. Now at the bottom, we're going to cut right on the line. There's no seam allowance added anywhere here. And we're going to follow its shape like this. Remember, I faired this up so that we get a nice gentle curve. Here we're going to cut right on here, but those arrows indicate a flange. I'll probably draw a flange on there so I don't get confused. There's the arrow indicating the end of the flange, and then we just follow this. What I meant by flange here is, I mean, I just need a space for these two fasteners, so there's no special flange built in there. And we'll cut all along this bottom edge and cut this all the way out. Okay, if we think about binding, if I have a straight corner like this, it's not 90 degrees, but if I have a sharp corner like that, binding doesn't go around there easily, but it does if it's curved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of tape, a roll of tape on here and kind of curve this, which will make it easy for my binding to go around that without having to cut it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, this port side. So I've laid my pattern material on here with sout facing up and pout facing up. So right now I'm just going to take the Sailrite edge hot knife with the precision cutting foot and blade, and we're going to cut around the perimeter, making sure that we have this pattern material securely in position. Okay, we'll cut it all the way out and show you what's next. Okay, so now I'm going to take my chalk pencil and I'm going to mark where this flange is, where we want the flange to be, and I'm just going to put an F there for flange. This is the end of the flange. Remember, we're going to make it one continuous piece, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. I am going to mark where the fasteners are now, but I'm never going to put fasteners in without going to the boat. And then this fastener goes someplace in here. The lines are probably the more accurate positions rather than the circle, because that was standing proud. So fastener there. We don't need to mark here. We do need to mark the awning track. So this is the end of the awning track, and you can either cut this, which is probably not a bad idea, but I think I'm just going to lift it up and kind of put dash lines where the awning track goes. But this is not a straight line. Okay, now over here we need to mark the center. Very important. Everything's still in the exact spot it should be. I'm going to probably put a notch here as well, because we don't want to lose track of that. Put a C for center. Now I am going to mark sout and pout on the correct sides.
In this next chapter, we're going to use the top panel as a pattern to create the center zippered pocket.
So we marked pout and sout on this panel, and this is the forward edge, so I marked FOR, and this is the aft edge, so you don't get confused. So I put some scrap underneath here, so we're going to make a pocket for the front, and we need to have at least 5 or 6 inches down here of hanging down the bottom edge. So, and we need to have at least 36 inches, because we're going to put a 36-inch pocket here. So all I do here is I follow the shape just with my chalk here. And obviously I'd want to go out about 18 or 19 inches from the middle spot on this side, probably a little bit more, and then we'll do the same thing over here on this side. So I want to make sure it's at least 36 inches plus 2 for him. Now we really should mark the center location, and this is P for port, and this is S for south. Okay, now we can remove this. So 19 inches from the center would be 1 inch for a hem, and then we'll do the same thing over here. 19 inches would be here. And then what I'm going to do, I know this isn't a perfectly straight line, but this is close enough. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just use this parallel to this, which puts this line perpendicular. And we need to mark, we're going to make a 4-inch pocket, so that's beyond 4 inches, and we'll do the same thing over here. We're going to cut on that line, and we're going to follow that line with a Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to create a line 4 inches down from that line. I'll show you after we get this cut out. I'm going to extend my chalk in my pencil so I can go through this hole, and we're going to go 4 inches from here, which is right there. And I'm going to carefully follow this edge, which basically gives us the exact same shape as that edge that we just cut, all the way down. Then we just cut it out with a hot knife right on that line. Now the zipper would go on this side, but we're not going to hem to this edge. We're going to actually flip this over so P and S are down, and we're going to put basting tape on this curved edge away from where we put the mark for the center. And this is the this is the 3/8 inch basting tape that comes in the kit. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on the 2 short ends, and we'll peel off the transfer paper of all of them first, because, well, I can just peel off a little bit here, and then peel this one off, and then we'll hem this over to about 1 inch or so. Doesn't have to be accurate. And then we'll peel a little bit of this off, oops, and hem this one the same way. Now we'll create the 1/2 inch hem on this side, and again I'm going to eyeball that. So we'll fold this to a 1/2 inch. And again, we want to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to crease it well to make sure it stays stuck. Okay, we separated the 2 halves of the 36-inch zipper, and I'm using the one with the starter post again. If you have a light color Sattler fabric, you'll get a white zipper. If you have a darker color, you'll get a black zipper. Okay, now we're going to peel off the 1/4 inch seam stick that we put on here, the transfer paper that is. It goes right here, and we just baste it down, matching it up to that 1/2-inch hem that we have. And at the end, what I'm going to do to create kind of like a reinforcement here, because it has a stop on it that we don't have to take off here, so I don't have to make a stop. I'm going to actually take this tail, which helps to reinforce it, and fold it back so that it's slightly inward of this. And when we sew through that, that'll just reinforce it nicely. Nice. Okay, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to sew the ends, doing a little bit of reversing. We're going to sew up to the zipper, make sure it stays basted well, and turn on that. Whoops. Easy to solve that, just do that. And I am going to, let's see, right about there, needle coming up, lift the foot, pivot on the foot, buried needle, I'm sorry. And we are going to do some reversing here to make sure that this zipper stays down well. We'll sew to the other end and do some reversing there as well. Okay, we're going to go ahead and zip this up. Hopefully the slider's on the right side for you. If it isn't, then you have to change things, and it is. You can see it's on the outside.
Where fasteners will be installed, we're going to reinforce it with Sailrite.
So I have 2 fasteners here. This is where my lines come through, and this is my awning track over here. So all I need to do is reinforce an area like this, and we use Sailrite. Sailrite comes in the kit. So if I make sure that I'm out 1.5 inches here and 1.5 inches here, that means this would be cut to here. And I would round the edges, kind of like I've done already, to just give it a pleasing look, something like that. So I can just sew around those edges. You won't see this. This is going to be on the underside, but you will see the stitches on the outside. That's why I like to round the edges like that. Doesn't have to go all the way to the edge. We're going to have binding on here in the later step, but there's our patch here. So now let's go over here to these fasteners. There are 2 fasteners here, and this Sailrite tape should accommodate those nicely. And we'll just run it along this edge and stop basically right here where this flange will be. We're going to build a flange there, which we'll show a little bit later. So I'm going to cut this slightly oversized by right there because I'm going to make that edge look nice. So we're going to cut here. We're going to round this edge like we've done before. Which looks good. And then we're going to put this side up. I should have rounded this edge because I like the dull side. Notice this is the shiny side. I like the dull side out. So I rounded the wrong edge, but we're going to cut that off. So I'll round this one in the same manner. So we're going to put this underneath here. This edge is rounded. The shiny side is up because it's actually going to go on this side. This is the outside surface. This is the underside surface. So we're going to stick it underneath here. And I'm going to put it right up against that edge. And then I'll take my, oops, I got to move this again because this didn't move with it, right to there. And I'm going to take my scriball white, and we'll just follow this, and I'll cut it right on that area with scissors because there's no reason this is not going to unravel. So now that that's trimmed, that matches up nicely. And oh, we see a little bit of fabric over here. I'm just going to trace or cut that off as well. Of course, we could always do that later on, but might as well do it now. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a 3/8 inch basting tape and just go down the 2 long edges. I'm not going to worry about the short edges. And we're going to baste it to the underside, which I will do now. So let's peel off this. This sticks really well to this. This is the shiny side. Dull side is facing the tabletop. If you get it backwards, it doesn't matter. It's just, that's the way I like to do it. This stuff is UV resistant and on both sides, though this is going to be on the inside. So we're going to put this in here underneath. Remember, the top side is facing out. And, oops, got to go over a little bit more. Like that. We could flip the fabric to do this too. And like that. And make sure that everything is flat. And there are no bubbles in it, which there are right here. So I'll just make sure that that bubble gets worked out. Nice. Now we're going to do the same thing to this piece. And we'll baste it to the underside right on top of those locations for the fastener. Okay, there's no need to sew the bottom edge. I'm going to start here, and I move the needle out to the left here, and we are going to do a little bit of reversing here. And I'm just going to follow that curve. I'm going to turn the worker bee down so that I can follow this curve beautifully. So we'll sew this one on and we'll sew that other one on in the same manner. We're not going to sew this outside edge here at all. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I believe this is starboard, but I'm not sure. Might be port. Here at the end, we'll do some reversing. Because there's going to be binding that goes from here all the way over to here, so that'll secure that down.
Using awning track and rope, it's an excellent way to secure the front of your Dodger. When used, the front canvas looks much smoother in appearance when compared to any other standard fastener, like snaps, twist locks, or lift the dot. Awning track and rope is not included in the Dodger Skin Kits, but it's sold separately.
This is a Ketter awning rope. It's available in white or black, and I put double-sided tape on it and cut it to the length of our awning track, which is marked on here. This goes on the outside, not the inside of our cover, so right where we marked it. And if you remember right, when we patterned, we drew right on top of the awning track, so these lines are the middle, which indicates that basically this would go down so that they're right. It's right up at the groove like that. So we're going to follow the lines and baste it on so that the dash lines are right in the groove of the rope all the way down. And it's not perfectly straight. This one's slightly curved. So I'm going to sew with a needle in the center position here, which should be sufficient. And I'm just going to do some heavy reversing at the end. We're sewing a 6mm straight stitch. And we're just going to have the right side of the outside presser foot up against the rope. And we're going to sew all the way to the other end and do some reversing there as well.
If you're making a brand new Dodger, assess whether or not you can mount an awning track on the deck near the edge of the forward panel. If you can, we recommend that you do that and use awning rope for a smoother look than fasteners. In this chapter, we're going to work with the clear vinyl window material that's included in the kit, and we're going to create a smiley face window with what we call the fully dressed zipper approach. What is it? Well, it's a flange that covers the zipper to help prevent the elements from leaking through the zipper. In preparation for this, first we need to cut our window material to the appropriate size. Remember on the boat, we marked the pattern material? We're going to discuss that now.
If you remember on the boat, we marked where we thought the window should go, and it could be manipulated if you'd like, but I still like those positions. So if I measure from this mark down here to this one, I get about 21 inches or so, so that's probably the height of the window. And then from this mark to that mark, I get about 66 inches, so we can make it a rectangle. However, I actually think it'd look good, and I've already kind of put some lines on here to indicate. I'd like to come down and kind of arch it here. As you can see, I've already done this in my head. And then have it run into basically where it goes straight again here, and then come up. So I think it'll just make it look a little bit nicer like that. So that's what we're going to do to cut our window out. This is our center line, and I'm not going to take up the pattern until I have it marked within the window area. So obviously it would come down to here. So I just do this, and I'll do it like that to indicate where the center is. Now I'm just going to strike lines to my locations. The curve goes to here, so I'm going to make it a nice and gentle one. And I'm going to go with my straight edge from that mark over there, which you probably can't see, to this mark, and strike a line so I can cut out my clear vinyl. This is one way you can get a curve, but you can also freehand it too like this, but this curve is pretty cool because you can see what it looks like before you actually mark it. Nice. Cutting out this 30 gauge sheet good is done really easily with scissors. Okay, we're using a 30 gauge Strataglass. OC is also another top brand. Those are the two top brands. They're very dimensionally stable, UV resistant, and they are a sheet good instead of a rolled good. A sheet good means there are several layers bonded together and each layer is polished and it's basically cooked. And that cooking makes the clear vinyl dimensionally stable. So we are using the top brand, Strataglass. This is a sample of the zipper that we're going to do. We're going to do a smiley face zipper. I'm going to keep it 1.5 inches from the bottom edge here. So that's where the bottom of my smiley face zipper will go. And we're going to go 20 inches from each, the middle section all the way out here, because we have the main sheets come through this window, and we have a traveler right in front of it. So basically I'm going to go over here. I'm using a grease pencil. These marks come off with a water and a rag or 3M adhesive remover. So 20 inches over here, and then we're going to go up, like I said, 1.5 inches, and we're going to strike a box there. Now at the top, we're going to go all the way off the top. So I'm going to be perpendicular to this top edge because that's straight, and I'm going to go straight up with my scry ball like that with a line that we can see. We're going to do the same thing over here, and then we're going to strike a line 1.5 inches from this bottom edge, which I'll just measure over here, and then I'll use a straight edge. So a smiley face window has a straight edge and then it curves slightly. And the more gradual the curve, the easier it is to install the smiley face window. So this is how I do it. Sometimes I use a 5-gallon bucket as a template, but I find this to be easier, and I don't always have a 5-gallon bucket. So from the corner I measure up 8 inches, and then I measure over 8 inches from that corner and put a mark. Okay, then what I do is go from mark to mark, and I strike a line. Again, all these lines will come off later, which is nice. Then I find the center of that, and it's usually 11.25 inches. So 11.25 would be 5 5/8. So right here. And then I measure down from the center 1 3/4. So right there, and I put a dot. Okay, let me wet that so that it marks. Okay, now what I do is I freehand basically from here over to here, but I'm going to use that curved ruler here for this, and it's already curved this way. So I'm going to go from this dot to that dot to this dot, and this will give me a nice smooth transition that shouldn't be too difficult to get the zipper to take the curve. Okay, still going to be a little tricky, but we'll show you some tricks on how to get this done. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side, other end. Now water works for this, but I have multi-surface cleaner, and that always works really well to remove the marks that we don't need. So we're going to remove this one and also this one without damage, hopefully taking off that one that we just marked for the curve. Right now we have the glass facing, so this is starboard and this is port, so this is the outside surface. I really should have marked these marks on the other side, but this will still work. So we're going to flip it so the inside surface is facing up. We have our number 10 coil lens zipper, and you can see I have a few inches going off the edge, which you should always have. And then I'm going to walk it around here to determine approximately the size. I want it to be oversized, because you'd rather never want to run out. So I'm just following the thing, and we'll cut it right here. We have a smiley face video that says to put the double-sided tape on the teeth side, but you can also do it on the back side. So we're going to put a 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas and upholstery very close to the raw edge on this side and also on that side with the teeth facing down. We're going to peel off the transfer paper just a little ways here, and we're going to start basting so that the teeth are up, and this is the wrong side of the glass. We're going to go a couple inches above here, and we're going to follow that line that we have on the underside. Now when you get to the curve, it's not going to want to take the curve exceptionally well, but we're gonna, so we'll probably have to cut slits in this. And the nice thing is you can cut slits in this thing without any problem because we're gonna cover it with binding. So let's see if it takes it, because this is a gradual curve, so it may not be too terrible, but I think I'm gonna, yeah, it's actually not bad now, but it might be when we do the other side. So let's get this basted on, then we'll baste on the other side, and we'll see if we have to cut slits, which I think we will. One of the reasons that I only peel off a little bit of transfer tape at a time is because the residue of the double-sided tape can get all over the glass, and you can clean it up with obviously a 3M specialty adhesive remover, but I'd rather not clean up a ton of it, so that's why I take it off in small increments. Now with this double-sided tape on this side, I'm going to peel it up all the way because it's basically in place, and we're going to start in the center, believe it or not. So I have that up, and I'm going to make sure that this is flat, and this is the center position, and I'll just go this direction. Doesn't matter which direction you go, but you just want to put it down nice and flat. And then when you get to the corner, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to go back up over to here, and we're going to put this down nice and flat. So the corner is the last thing we have to do, and I'll do the same thing going this direction. Then I'll show you what we do with the corners. Okay, so sometimes we have to cut relief slits on this side, but this is a pretty gradual turn, so we may not have to, but definitely wrinkles are going to have to come in the corner. And I want to distribute those to make them as small as possible, and yet have the zipper lay as flat as possible on the clear vinyl. So you can see I'm pushing the flange of the zipper and putting wrinkles in it. And sometimes what you need to do is even release this side a little bit, so you can see I still have wrinkles I still have bumps on the zipper. If I actually do this and lift this up, don't worry about the double-sided tape. Again, it's going to be covered. Sometimes I can work some of those out just by doing that, and then rebasting as I go up. And now my zipper is much flatter, and I want to push these wrinkles in. When we sew them, we're going to actually sew them in place, and so they're not going to move on us as much. This one's a little bit too big, so I'm going to distribute it. And that's how you get a smiley face zipper. And I don't think I need to cut any relief slits over here because it actually is pretty flat. Nice. You can see that I've rolled up my clear vinyl window material, and we're going to start sewing on the inside here. Now this stitch is going to be hidden by our facing tape, or basically a binding. And we're going to start here at the top. And I've left my needle in the center position, which should be fine for this. You can also move it closer to the teeth if you like. I am not going to do any reversing here. I'm just going to sew along here because we're just securing this staple in place. So I'm sewing with the right side of the outside presser feet up against the zipper's teeth, and I've already checked tension to make sure that we're good. So we're getting closer to that curve, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn down the worker bee power pack system so that I have optimal slow speed control here. So I'm going really slow here, and this is where we want to sew in those wrinkles in this application. So I'm going to make sure that the zipper is nice down flat, and just sew over those, following that curve. Anywhere it comes unbasted, just make sure that it's down flat. Looks like it's staying basted fine. That's a big wrinkle right there, but again, it's going to be covered. Now we're almost in our straightaway here. I'm going to turn up the worker bee. Okay, now all we have to do is sew this one. Now when I get to the curve, I have to make sure it lays down flat. Needle still in center position. That's going to work fine just to get this secured and so we can get our next steps done. So before I get to this curve, you can see there's a little bump here. So I'm going to flatten that out and make sure this is splayed out nicely. Actually, I think it's pretty good actually the way it is, so I don't think I need to move anything. I'm going to turn down the worker bee here. That's how easy it is. We'll sew all the way to the other end following this exact same procedure. So now I'm going to walk my binding. This is a 1-inch binding. You could use 3/4 as well, but this is what comes in the kit. And we're going to walk it to this distance, and we need 2 pieces, and I need to make sure I have some extra. So right there is where I'm going to cut it, and you don't need to use a hot knife. We'll cut 2 pieces to the same length. Now we're going to put the 3/8 inch double-sided tape on the underside of the binding, and we're going to put 2 strips on because we want this to hold like a bejeebers. It makes it so much easier for sewing. So we're going to do that to both these strips. Now one of the other things we're going to do once to get this on, I'll show you as soon as I start a piece here. So this piece goes on just like that. So imagine this being all the way down there. We want to use something like a heavy object like the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler, and we want to press it down well because we want it to stick really well to this Sattler Marine Grade Fabric. We're going to peel off both sides of the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and we want to stick it fairly close to the teeth, but not so close that it's hard to pull the slider. So you see how I have it about an 1/8 inch or so away from the zipper's teeth. This is a bias binding, so it will take the curve fairly well. You'll see a little bit of what looks like excess fabric, but that will actually sew down well. We're going to sew this side first. So we're going to stick this all the way around, and then we're going to flip it over and stick a piece on the other side directly over the top of this. I flipped it over, and now we're working on the outside surface, and all I'm doing is matching up the edge of the binding with the edge of the binding underneath and basting it in place, pulling off both transfer papers as we go. And then we will apply a lot of pressure down with my finger or either with the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler. Now here, these are going to have wrinkles in them like this. I'm going to leave those up. I'm just going to press down this side to make sure that it doesn't move on me. This will sew out of it when we sew that after the first stitch. Okay, so I've got my needle in the right position, and I'm going to sew right next to this binding, making sure that the bottom binding doesn't move. And you want to sew the outside edge first because that's the smoothest edge at the curve. And then you can worry, once it's sewn down, about the inside edge. So we're going to make sure that we're looking through the glass to make sure that our binding on the bottom is in the right spot. With all that double-sided tape, we should be fine. And we're sewing a 6mm straight stitch. And I've got my worker bee turned way down so I have maximum control. I'm going to go really slow here. Check to make sure everything is still basted well. You can see it is, so we're good. Still good. Okay, we're going to sew all the way to the other end following this procedure, and then we'll show you how to sew the inside edge with all those wrinkles at the curve, which will hopefully come out. So now I flipped it over so that the teeth are down, and I'm sewing the inside edge, and I moved the needle to the left. You can see that it's moved all the way to the left. And I'm going to start here at the top. No reason to do reversing. We are going to have this go sew into another panel, and we're going to start here. And when I get to the curve, I want to try to work out those wrinkles to the best of my ability. So again, now everything's sewn in place, so I don't have to worry about are the tapes on top of each other. They are. But I do have to worry about these wrinkles here, so I want to basically distribute them so that I don't get a wrinkle. You'll see what I mean. So sometimes I even feel underneath to see that everything is laying so that there's not a serious wrinkle, and I can feel it with my fingers that everything feels good. So up to this point, we're good to sew. push that one over closer to the foot to kind of remove it completely. Because this is bias binding, it actually does pretty much remove itself. I can feel that there are no wrinkles on the underside. So you can see that this pretty much removes the wrinkles as long as you're diligent about flattening them, and you can sew around the perimeter in this manner. Now here's a pretty big wrinkle here, so I'm going to distribute this a little bit by lifting it up and pushing it towards my foot so that I don't have a serious wrinkle at this one area. There, that's pretty good. See if we can move this one a little bit. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Nice. So I've cut a piece for this side. This is a side that's with the teeth up. So this is the inside surface. And I put double-sided tape and 2 rungs. And I can't stress enough that you must press it down well with something like this because we want this to stick well. So I'm going to peel this off, and I'm going to put this at the same distance that we did on this side for this one and follow it around here. Now this is a little bit sharper curve, but I think we can get the job done in the same manner. So this is the process, and we'll show you what's next after we get this on all the way. At these corners, we want to kind of push this one down and get it settled, because we're not going to sew this one on until we actually have the water-resistant flange on the other side. So if you have more aggressive wrinkles, then distribute them. So hopefully we won't be sewing any wrinkles into this. So you want to do this at both the corners. Get it down nice and neat, and then make sure you press super well. You may even want to use this, just don't scratch your clear vinyl with it. I've cut a piece of pattern material that's a little bit bigger than this, and then I'm going to put a weighted sandbag on it, and I'm going to mark where this edge is. So right there, basically across there, and then I'm going to mark this outer edge of the binding here and here, all around the perimeter. At the center position, I marked a center position here. I'm going to just mark up here right into that. So basically we're going to go around like this and follow that. Here at the curves, we're going to follow the curves right over top of this. Now I put a P on here for port because I labeled my glass P and S for starboard, just so that we have that. So now this is patterned, and we're going to set the glass aside and work with this right now. So we're cutting out the pattern material basically right on that mark we have. And I know that we're going to have some seam allowance here because we are going to sew 2 pieces together to make this flange. Now if you want to waste fabric, you can do it like this and obviously put it all in the fabric, but I recommend that you cut it right in the center seam, and then you add a 1/2 inch seam allowance here and a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. And that way you don't waste as much of your Sattler Marine Grade fabric. So I can lay this one here, and I can lay this one here, and then we'll just sew them together. Now what we need to do is we need to make, actually I could probably get better cloth usage over here. Make sure that we add 1/2 inch seam allowance here and over there. The P and the S helps us to determine where the seam allowance goes. And I'll put something heavy on this, and I'm going to trace around this. I got to find my chalk. So there's my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I kind of guessed at it, but I'm going to make these a little bit extra long. I know that's not a lot of fabric, but I'd rather have it long than too short here. And then I just mark around. Once I get this marked, I'll move the sandbag and mark underneath it. Chalk pencil works great for this. Now I'm not using a hot knife, I'm just scissor cutting because all these edges are going to be concealed or hidden, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I am going to take these, this one's already cut out and I put an S on it to indicate starboard, and that we will pattern off of these a second time with the same surfaces facing up. We'll do the same thing with this one. So we're going to have 4 of these when we're done. Okay, I have 2 ports and I have 2 starboards, and they're next to each other. So we have to sew the center seam. So this, it doesn't really matter which one you do, but this port is going to go facing towards the starboard here. So this goes like this, and we sew it here. Okay, so that's that. This will actually be the opposite way. So what I want to do with this one is I want to flip this one so that the port is facing down, and then the starboard would be facing down. I gotta get orientated. Like, oh yeah, starboard would be facing up, I'm sorry. So just like this. So starboard here, port here, and on this one, port and starboard are facing each other. So we're gonna sew a 1/2 inch here and here. Needles at center position. We're gonna follow the 1/2 inch mark on the needle plate, which is right there. And we're gonna sew a straight stitch. We're doing some reversing at the beginning and the end. I've got my worker bead turned down. I'm gonna turn it back up again. So we'll reverse here. And we'll reverse at the end. Then I'll just feed this one in. It's already set up exactly the same. And sew through it in the same manner. Okay, back to the table. So here's my seam allowance, and I have port and starboard, and if I flip this one over like that, so now I have the seam allowance down, I have starboard and port, so that's perfect. So what I want to do is I want to baste them so outside surfaces face each other. So I'm going to baste it on the one that is facing, the seam allowance is facing down on this side. And I want to use 1/4 inch seam stick because I don't want this to show up after I sew this edge. So we're going to go all the way around just this edge all the way to the end over there. Peel off this transfer paper all the way, and then we're going to start at the center here. So outside surfaces again are facing each other, so you can see this is, and we're going to put those seams directly over top of each other, and we'll baste to the left, and then we'll baste to the right. I put my magnetic guide so it's almost up against the outside of the right side of the outside presser foot. So this is about a 3/8 inch stitch, needles in center position. I'm also going to reduce my stitch length because I don't want this to show big holes. So I'm going to make it about 3 millimeters or so. And no reason to do any reversing here. Well, actually there is, because we're going to be pulling against this. So I'm going to reverse at the end, and then we're just going to sew along this outside edge, the one that we basted together, all the way around, and reverse when we reach the other end.
Unfortunately, I had an SD1 needle in, instead of a round sharp point, which I should have had in the machine when sewing this.
When I sewed through the seam allowance, I laid one to the left and one to the right, just so it cuts down on the bulk, just FYI. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to turn it right side out, and we're going to crease it well. So basically we're going to fold right on this stitch, and I'm going to crease it with this Sailrite canvas patterning ruler once I do that. So after this is done, we'll show you what it's like. Okay, so now we're going to do a top stitch right next to this folded area here, and I've switched the machine backs to 6 millimeter straight stitch, and I'm going to just use the right side of my inside foot, and I'm going to put my needle to the right to get really close to this edge because I think it looks better. But you can, as long as you're sewing in your seam allowance, you're fine. So we'll do a little bit of reversing here, not much, and make sure we're splayed out on that, and we'll sew around the perimeter.
Along that folded edge, you're going to see a difference from using a round/sharp point and using an SD1 needle. An SD1 needle cuts fibers while a round/sharp point pushes fibers. So here, right where I'm sewing, some of the fabric fibers are blowing out from every needle penetration. That's because we were using the wrong type needle. It won't ruin the job, but if you'd notice those little bumps at the bottom of the fold, that's because our needle was cutting fibers rather than pushing them apart.
This is the outside surface of our clear vinyl. You can tell because the zipper's on the underside. This is going to go on like this. This is the starboard side, and you can see our S over here for starboard, so we know that we're right. And we're going to baste it to this edge. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it upside down, and I'm going to run double-sided tape right along this edge. Now we definitely want to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler or something heavy to make sure this double-sided tape sticks well to the Sattler acrylic fabric, which we've done already. And now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this clear vinyl down. We're going to stick it to the outside surface, and if it's extra long, then we can trim it too. So it's almost the exact size of the flange right now. So we're going to peel this off, and we need to make sure that it's centered in here. So that should be good right there. I want it not to stick over this edge because we're going to have binding over the top of this. So I really want it to be about a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch away from that edge. I'd rather have it stick over this edge, if anything. But it'd be nice if it were kind of up against that edge, because here, let's look at it on the other side. What would it look like if you see it? It's all right. But I think I want to go for a look that is matched up with this binding. So I'm going to trim a little bit off of here so that we can actually have it fairly close to this edge of the binding. So I'm just going to trim away about an 1/8 inch all the way around here to make this a little bit smaller. Just use scissors because it's all going to be hidden. So now I've trimmed it to size. So now I can basically just match up this binding edge and baste it in place and see how we are well within this one. This could even be a 1/2 inch within this edge because this is going to have binding over the top of it. So we're just going to baste it around the perimeter, making sure that those edges match up all the way around. Okay, we measured a length of binding again, and we're going to put the double-sided tape 3/8 on this side and also on this side again. And then we're going to press it down really well. This goes on so that the edge is matched up with the edge of the binding on the underside. You can see right through the glass all the way around. We're going to scroll this up so we can get underneath the throat of the sewing machine. And we are going to sew this side towards the flange first. So foot down, needles to the right, 6mm straight stitch, and we want to slow up the worker bee a little bit so that we have optimal control. So if you sew this side first, then you can deal with the wrinkles once everything's in place. Just make sure that, again, you're checking to make sure the binding on the underside and the top is matched up. We're now sewing the other side, and when we get to the curve, which I'm at already because we didn't start showing this, you need to make sure that all these wrinkles are worked flat, even on the underside that you can't see, and you can almost feel them. So again, same process. Just want to try not to sew in a wrinkle. You want to flatten them out as best as possible and distribute the excess as evenly as possible. And we're going to sew all the way to the other end following the same procedure, and we'll show you what's next after this. So now we have beautiful binding on the inside. This is what you're going to be seeing on the inside, and we have a flange on the outside that will provide protection from all the elements. Now we need to slit the glass before we put the slider on. So I'm going to slit the clear vinyl right here, not in the middle because it'll just make the slider move easier. The slider can sometimes get stuck on these. And I'm using a new seam ripper, that's important, and I'm going to cut it really close to this binding carefully. And sometimes you can use scissors too. You just don't want to cut your zipper or your binding or anything like that. You just want to cut the clear vinyl just like that. So you either use a seam ripper or a pair of scissors and take your time and go all the way around. So if you look at the slider, you can see there's a raised ridge here, and that raised ridge has to go on the side where the teeth are. This is a double pull slider, and that means I can open the window from both the inside and outside. And we just start on there like that. Sides are even. And yeah, I don't have any bubbles in it, so that is good. We got to get this thing to go down. I'm going to make this go back like that just to get it in place. Okay, and then we're going to put one on from this end too so they can zip together like that. We're going to go ahead and cut this now that our sliders are on so that it's flush with the clear vinyl on both this side and that. Okay, I've got the needle in center position, and I'm just going to sew across this because I don't want these stitches to come loose, and we are going to be covering this in a future step. So I'm going to sew back and reverse a little bit there. We'll sew over our teeth and then do reversing here. Probably go reverse all the way back. Notice I'm very close to the raw edge because I don't want this stitch to show up when I'm done. And we'll do the same thing to the other one. There we go.
Now it's time to sew the clear window onto the front panel.
Okay, so if your window is not laying flat, you can take a hair dryer or a heat gun, as long as you just don't heat it too much, and that softens up the vinyl and allows it to lay a little bit flatter, which helps quite a bit. We're going to put basting tape on the underside. Notice that the flange is facing up, so this is the outside surface. I guess I should say this is the outside surface of the clear vinyl window all around its perimeter. Notice that the double-sided tape goes right over the top of your flanges, which is normal. So now we're going to flip this so that the zipper is exposed. This is the inside of our front panel, and I'm going to position it where I want it, and I'm going to try to have the spacing be equal on both the left and right side. I like to have about 2.5 inches or so to 2 inches, because we're going to seam this area here. I'd rather have the window higher than I would lower because that makes for better visibility. Once we have it in the right position that we're happy with, which looks pretty good right there, we're going to peel off the double-sided tape, and this side's going to have a binding on it as well. I'm going to rip that right here. And I want to make sure this is totally flat as I based, okay? So we're going to do this all around the perimeter, making sure that we don't have any bubbles anywhere. And we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. You can see that I put double-sided tape on the clear vinyl close to the edge again, and now I'm putting the 1-inch binding that comes in the kit right alongside the clear vinyl. And we're going to sew right in here, which will secure the clear vinyl and the binding. And this binding helps to hide the double-sided tape that you would see through the window and gives it a nice finished look on the inside. We just go right over these points. If you want, you could take this off and you can hot knife it or trim it down a little bit, but it's hardly going to be recognizable, so I'm not going to do anything about it. When I get to the corners here, what I do is I use my scissors and I trim it so that it's flush to the edge, and then I use my hot knife and I just simply touch the edges of the binding with a hot knife, and then we start the next run, and that seals the edge. So the next run would come down here, and we'll do the exact same thing with this binding. This edge has not been heat sealed, so I'll heat seal it like that. Not so much that it burns, and just right up flush with it. Okay, when you get down here to this, since it's got some shape to it, what we're going to do is we're going to follow that shape with our scissors, maybe go a teeny bit long like that, which is good, and then I'll hot knife it and we'll follow this shape, cutting it to match that. Now this curves a little bit, but this is a bias binding, so again it should take the curve nicely. Just force it to take that curve. Worker B is turned down so that I can get as slow as possible speed out of this. We're going to put the stitch really close to this edge so my needle's in the right position, 6mm stitch length, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the right here, and we'll do a teeny bit of reversing. Okay, so now you got to make sure everything stays basted and fed in without impeding on anything. So this is a straight run, so this is pretty easy. But do take your time, and you should check your tension on the underside before you get too far. So once I get far enough so I can lift the fabric up, I'm going to check it, which should be right there. So I'll bury my needle so I don't lose my spot with the needle coming up, and let's look to make sure it's good, because we're going through clear glass and everything. Yeah, it looks great. It's stuck on something already. Awning to rope. What you have to watch for when you're doing this is making sure the awning rope or anything else doesn't get stuck on it, because that can cause you to miss. So now when we get to this zipper, this is relatively thick, and I might walk this through. So watch what I do here. Super, super, super thick. When I get to the zipper, I think I'm going to actually just roll the balance wheel by hand. I might get a skip stitch here or two. Yeah, I got a skip stitch. It's kind of expected for this. I mean, it's just super, super thick. Once I get past the zipper, I'm going to continue on. No need to do any reversing there. Here we are, now we're past it. Make sure everything stays basted. See how it's coming apart here because of the curve of the table. My needle's buried so I can make adjustments. There we go. I'm going to try to lift this up so I can more easily sew it. Oh, that's so much better.
When we get to the corner, we're going to do the bury the needle and rotate routine. In lieu of that, you could simply reverse at the end of each pass, pull your fabric out, reposition it, and reverse the beginning and the end. That may be easier for you. It's your choice.
Okay, we're getting close to this corner, and I'm going to try to bury my needle and pivot on it. So I'm going to stop at the same location, sewing down the opposite side. So I'm going to go slow here. I need to go a half stitch more, so I'm going to use my reverse lever to do that. Right about there. Needle's buried. Now I'm going to make sure the needle's coming up before I pivot so I don't get a skip stitch. There we go. Now I can lift my foot and pivot on that buried needle to turn the corner. And I probably better grab the clear vinyl on the back side to make sure I don't damage anything. There we go. We're going to scroll this up so that it doesn't interfere with anything, and push it through the arm of the sewing machine. Don't forget to lower your foot. Okay, so we're going to do this all around the perimeter. There's no need to do any reversing until you get to the beginning again. Before I sew up to these sliders, sometimes the puller can be in the way. So what I like to do is I like to zip them back past the area that I'm sewing. That way they don't ever get in the way. We have it sewn around the outer perimeter everywhere now. So now I'm going to open up this zipper, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a slit in the top fabric. Okay, because this fabric's coming out. So don't cut anything, your flanges or anything like that, just cut a slit like that. Okay, now let's flip it over. Let's go ahead and zip this up before we do. Okay, so there's our slip. So now what we have is we have an outline with our stitches all the way around. And I'll show you what we do now. This is the outside surface, obviously the clear vinyl's underneath. And from our stitch, we want to measure over 1 1.5 inches, I'm sorry. Sometimes what I do is I actually put a mark on the clear acrylic ruler so I can see where that is. And then make sure it's on the stitch all the way up, and then scribe a line. And this line is going to be a cut line, so I'm using a scribe ball pencil. You could use a number 2 pencil for this. Along this edge, it needs to be 1.5 inches. This one takes a curve, so we're going to follow that curve like that. Oops, I'm not on 1.5 inches. Now I'm on 1.5 inches. And we're going to go all the way around the perimeter like this. Okay, through that slit we made, I'm going to cut, being careful not to cut anything underneath just that one layer of the Sattler fabric. So we're going to go all the way to that line that we struck, lifting the fabric as we go. Don't use a hot knife for this because this is going to be tucked under, and then we're going to cut right on that line all the way around. So now we're going to put miters in so that we can fold this material back. Now it won't go all the way to the edge, so I'm going to go from corner to corner, and I'm going to go about a little bit more than halfway with a scribe ball like that. At 90-degree corners, it's relatively easy, corner to corner, and go about halfway like that. Now we're not going to cut that deep, so don't do that. Again, we're not going to cut that deep. Now what I want to do is I want to cut, and I'm going to use scissors first, and I want to cut till I see the binding. So I lift this up, and I don't see it yet. There, I'm starting to see it. I'll lift this up so you can see. So see how we're right? I hope there's no glare there. We're right basically at the corner of the binding. That's where we want to stop, okay? So now for this one, same thing. Let me get a different angle over here. I'm going to cut. Let's see, make sure I'm not, until I see the binding on the other underside. A little bit more here. Yeah, there's the corner. Okay, so we're going to do that to the other side as well. Now, before we do anything, I'm going to burn the ends of this with a hot knife since we have this new foot. So I'm using the precision cutting foot and blade, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and this will protect the glass, and I just want to get the corner more than anything else. So it basically heat seals it like that. So we'll do that at each corner. Now I'm going to take the 3/8 inch basting tape, and I want to baste it into the corner as far as I can get, because this helps to water seal it, but I don't want to go over the edge of the binding. So see how I'm a little bit inside that edge? If I get too far from the edge, then I won't sew through the double-sided tape. If you sew through the double-sided tape, it actually helps to seal the holes and prevent leakage, or help prevent leakage. So I'm going to go all the way around the perimeter like this, and we'll show you what's next. So let's start with this end, or side. It doesn't really matter which side you start with. I'll peel it back, the double-sided tape to there. Then what you want to do is you want to fold this under, and you want this edge to be flush with the binding. So tuck it in there. And if you cut too much, you may have to trim more off, but I think that's pretty good. Let's see if I can get, yeah. So I'm matching it up as I go to the binding underneath. I'm creating a fold of my own accord and tucking that hem that is left with the raw edge appropriately all the way down. And then you can, and let's show you the miter corner while we're at it. So let's fold this up to that. The double-sided tape helps hold everything. And then this would get folded down. Oops, I got to peel off the double-sided tape. I mean the transfer paper, which is really hard with my fat fingers. There we go. Fold this down. If you didn't cut it enough, you may have to cut it more, but we'll find out here in a second. Oh yeah, that's going to look good. So that's the idea of the miter. Okay? Okay, we've gone around the entire perimeter, and it's not a bad idea to flip it over and make sure that you don't have any revealing fabric all around the perimeter, which we do not. Yeah. We're going to sew it from this side, though it probably doesn't matter. I'll start at this corner, and I have my needle in the left position, so it's just a matter of sewing around the perimeter, kind of like we did before. I will do a little bit of reversing here. Okay, and we have the worker bee turned down so that we can be as accurate as possible. We'll sew around the perimeter.
Next, we'll join the front and top panels together and also add the pocket at the center.
So we have the front panel with the window, so the outside surface is facing up. And we could put in another window, but we're going to put it on the boat and see if it's necessary. And all I'm doing on this side where the front panel connects to the top panel is putting the 3/8 inch seam stick all the way down this edge, close to the raw edge. I'm going to go ahead and take the transfer paper off all the way to the middle position where we marked it in the middle. I also cut a triangle right there, center spot. You can see the triangle there. Okay, so remember, outside surface is facing up. So now what we want to do is we want to take the top panel, this is the pocket that's not yet attached. Outside surfaces will face each other. So this is port, and this is port. We cut it off over here. So basically they should line up, and they do. I mean, they should be on the right end. We're going to start basting from the center. Now there is shape in this. So you see the center mark there. We'll just start right there, and we'll baste either to the left or to the right, matching up the edges as we go. Now once we start at the center, we definitely have to clip it. So there's the center. I'll just clip it here, and about every foot or so all the way down, because there's a lot of shape at the end. If we don't do that, it's going to come apart. So these are the best clips to use. I highly recommend them for this kind of application. They're sticky, as I mentioned, and they grip really, really well. Okay, so we're getting to the really shapely section. Clip it again, and what you can do is you can actually bring this panel over, and it's easier to baste it. So watch, I actually lift it off the table, and I can match it up more easily doing that. And we're going to clip it there. So we'll go all the way to the end. We're coming to the end. Let's see how even it comes out. Hey, it's not too bad. I should have about a 1/2 inch of excess fabric as a dog ear, and I do have that, a little bit more, but it's, in my opinion, that's really a job well done. So to put the pocket on, this is the top. We need to flip it over so the clear vinyl is showing, and I'll just put that edge that we clipped over there. So now we got to put the intermediate pocket, or the center pocket, on, and it goes over here. So it would go on, and I don't care if it says port or starboard. If it's mixed up, it's fine, because this shape's the same right here in the middle. So it goes on this edge right here, so that the zipper hems and everything are down. So in other words, the finished side's facing down against the outside or the inside of this top. And when we do a stitch here, and then when we do a top stitch, it would get folded over and get sewn onto the top panel. So basting tape needs to go on right here. So why not just clip it? Well, you could do that, but basting tape, if you sew through it, does help prevent water from wicking through the needle holes. So it is your choice, but I'm going to use it. Okay, now peel this off. and we will baste and clip. So we have to remove some of the clips that we have on there. Again, so the hems are facing down. There's our center position. So we're going to remove the clips in the zipper area, starting at the center, working left and right. And then we'll reclip it and take it to the machine and sew. Magnetic guides on at a 1/2 inch, needles in center position, 6mm straight stitch. Do a little bit of reversing at the beginning. We're going to turn up the worker bee. This is a semi-flat felled seam. So we're just going to sew at a 1/2 inch from the raw edge, removing the clips as we come upon them, making sure everything stays basted. There's a lot of bulk here, but these clips will keep it all together for us as we sew.
When you're sewing bulky assemblies like this with lots of applications like clear vinyl window material, awning rope, and so forth, make sure things don't get stuck on the tabletop. That's why I lifted the left-hand side of the assembly to make sure that nothing gets stuck as I sew it, because as soon as it gets stuck, it stops the sewing machine from sewing accurately.
Okay, to prepare for our top stitch, there's a lot of fabric here and a lot of shape where we want this part to go in the throat of the sewing machine. So I'm going to scroll it up. It really is better to scroll it up with 2 people to get it to go through the throat of the sewing machine. Notice here that it looks like there's more than a 1/2 inch. Well, that's because we did a top stitch here, which took up a 1/2 inch. So that's perfectly normal. We'll trim that away or either fold it before we put the binding on. So I'm going to use this, the inside of the outside foot as my guide, and the needles in center position. I'm going to turn down the worker bee power pack system so I can really have good slow speed control. We're going to do a little bit of reversing here. Okay, and then we're going to splay left and right, and we are sewing the seam allowance into the top. This is the top. This is the one with the window. So seam allowance goes this way so water can shed off like a shingle. Now there's a lot of shape in this. That's why I'm going to go slow, and I'm going to take my time, and every time I stop, I'm going to bury the needle and spread out the fabric. The glass is on the outside, so hopefully it won't get in the way when we're doing this top stitch. So make sure your seam allowance is on the right side and slowly sew this. Bury my needle, make adjustments.
The clear vinyl might get stuck to our tabletop. You'll see me lifting it over the edge of the tabletop so that it doesn't happen. Now it won't get stuck on the table as I sew.
So now I'm just going to sew a couple inches because that's what I've got smoothed out. Not too hard. Okay, as we get to the zipper, we want the pocket to be sewn in like this. So we're just sewing the seam allowance, and the pocket is splayed towards the window. If you look at the top side here, you can see the pocket is actually through the clear vinyl. So it's laying this direction. So I'm not sewing only the seam allowance on the underside of the pocket.
In this chapter, we're going to sew the 1-inch binding on the edge of the Dodger.
We've bound the tail with binding, and now we need to bind around the perimeter, but we have this kind of mess right here. So the best way to deal with that is to sometimes just work with it and get this to fold so that it's following the same plane. So just about like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a clip here, and I'm not going to bind it. I'm not going to worry about cutting off this excess fabric, and then we want to follow this down to here. Now we have this dog ear here that we'll trim off like that, and we will put a couple clips here because we're going to bind this folded edge. Okay, so here, and then eventually it becomes straight, pretty much at that seam. So I'll put one more clip here. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side here, and we might actually take it to the machine and just sew it so I don't have to worry about it before I bind it. Okay, so I have it in the machine here. I removed the clip that I had here, and I'm going to put my foot down. And remember, nobody's going to see the stitch as long as you get it close to the edge, because we are going to bind here. So I'm going to sew right here. Just do a little bit of reversing to make sure it's locked in place. And as long as you stay really close to that folded edge, then we'll be fine. Let's move these clips. I think it's looking good. And then pretty much when we come down to here, we're just gonna do some reversing here. That way we don't have to think about it when we're binding. There we go. And we'll do the same thing to the other end or side. Okay, I put my 1-inch binding in the 1-inch swing away binder, and I've hot knifed the end of the binding because it's gonna be left raw. And we're gonna start here. Okay, so we want to get as close to this, but we have this pocket over here too. So I'm going to spread the pocket out so I can see where it's at. And put this in here. Get it as close to that end as possible. Shove the binding up there. So right up flush with that, okay? So now I'm going to lower the foot, and I'm on a big bump right now. But I want to get this binding secured here. So, oops, and the binding moved away. So let's push it back in there, and we'll start right here. Now I got it secured, and I'm going to do some heavy reversing here, not going very far, and then push this back, and then start feeding it, okay? Now the outside surface of my Dodger is up, which I highly recommend when sewing binding on. Just because the top is usually always prettier than the bottom side or the inside. And I did increase the upper tension a little bit because when you're sewing binding, sometimes you get a little bit looser stitch on the bottom. So we're going to go all the way around, and I'm going to push the assembly well into the fold of the binder as I sew. So now we're back to the raw edge, you know, after we did that sewing just a minute ago. And we're going to get to this corner, and I'll show you what we do there. Let's check our underside, bury our needle. It's always a good idea to check to make sure that you got good tension and everything. It looks like I can do with a little bit more upper tension, so I'm going to go half turn more. Okay, now we have this reinforcement down here, and we're starting to turn a corner. So I'm going to shove this in here all the way to the fold, and even if I create a little wrinkle here, that's actually what I want. You got to be concerned about the exiting point. Okay, keep turning. Not wanting to shove in there as well as I'd like. There we go. Now I am to the straightaway down here, and we'll just keep going around in that order, and that should work well. I got to straighten out my fabric. This is an inside turn, and inside turns aren't much fun, but they can be done. So shove it in there at the exiting point, and then kind of straighten out your fabric a little bit as it gets to that point. So I'm putting a lot of pressure with this finger here in at that point, and now we're past it, and we can start to straighten out. So that's all you do for an inside curve that's gradual like that. Sometimes it's easy just to take the material when you're sewing binding like this and fold it over the top like this, and then straighten out a path. Now I know I have the light on, and the camera guy doesn't usually like that, but this makes it pretty easy. And then when I get to a certain point, when I feel like I need to straighten out more, I bury my needle and I just scroll the fabric up like that again. Okay, little tip. Okay, we're going to put the Sailrite tag on because it shows the world that you did it yourself. So I bind this inside. I use basting tape on the inside, and then I'll use some on the outside here because we're going to baste it on the other side. And we have a one in white and black. Black, I think, goes better with this, so that's the one we're going to use. So I'm going to put it so it's on the inside of the cover, because you've got logos on both sides, and right up against this edge. So when I sew the binding, this will sew this in place right along this bottom edge. So that's all there is to it. Now it's sewing in. I cut my binding to approximately where it's going to stop, and here there's a bulk of stuff. So what I've done is I've sewn up to this point, and I should have buried my needle. Let's bury the needle. And I'm going to pull the binder away before I get to all this, and I'm going to put the rest of it on by hand. Looks like I've got too much binding, so I'm going to trim it to size and hot knife it. Then I'll show you how we do it by hand. Okay, so all I do is I position it in the right spot and fold it over the edge like that, and then sew up to that point, and then we'll do some reversing right there. And that's how you do a bit by hand. I'm going to sew off of the end a little bit and then do reversing. There we go.
A fastener flange is utilized when a fastener has to go into a horizontal or almost horizontal surface. Canvas doesn't like to take a turn on a horizontal surface or slightly horizontal surface, so a fastener flange is used to keep the edge of the canvas nice and straight and still be able to attach it with fasteners. In this chapter, we're going to show you how it's done.
So we have to put a flange here, and we're going to do the full width of this, which I believe is 20 inches. 19 inches. Now, if you had a curved section, this is an example of a flange that it would basically have curves in it. You'd probably want to put a fastener at specific spots. Ours is pretty much straight. So the idea is the fastener will attach here, and this flange will allow the material to basically go almost vertical. Usually it's off like this, but it can be vertical as well. And then you can attach fasteners or flanges where you need them. This flange is 3 inches wide, rounded edge, and obviously sewn onto the back with a twist lock eyelet. Okay, so how do you make these? Let's show you. What you want to do is get some scrap Sattler fabric. You should have plenty. And we need to cut it to 3 inches. Okay, now this edge is not hot knifed, but I'm going to use it and then I'll just touch it with a hot knife. So 3 inches is there. We'll mark this, and we said we need to go 19 inches. So 19 inches is right there. So we're going to go right to the 19 inches. No allowance for seam allowance or anything. Okay, and then we're going to cut this out with a hot knife, and we're going to seal this edge with a hot knife. This is a Sailrite 3-inch tape that's included in the kit, and we're going to cut it to the same length just with scissors. You don't need to use a hot knife on it. Then we're going to cut it to 1.5 inches. Okay, so 1.5 inches is right there. This is a reinforcement on the bottom side. Here I have to use a scribe ball. If you get the tip of the scribe ball wet, it marks really well. Just FYI. Okay, we're going to cut that with scissors. On the shiny side, I'm going to put double-sided tape, probably just on both long sides. 3/8 inch or 1/4 inch will work well, because it sticks like crazy to the stuff. Now, if you get the shiny side the other way, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's just I like the dull side up, but the shiny side is going to go against the canvas. Okay, so now we take the canvas, doesn't matter which side, and we adhere it so that it's flush, okay, like that. All right. Now what we do is we fold the Sattler fabric back against itself so that you see really faint amount of the Sailrite, which is like a truck tarp material, really tough stuff for fastener reinforcement. So we're folding basically right up against that Sailrite and creasing it well. Okay, I'm going to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to get a good crease on it. Okay, let's take it to the machine. I reduced the stitch length to about 5 to 4 millimeters, and I'm going to sew this whole thing with that. So I've got my needle in the right position, and I'm going to sew really close to that fold. And I want to make sure that I do some heavy reversing. I don't want this to pull out, and then we're just going to sew down this side. So you're sewing right next to the fold, and you're also sewing into the Sailrite on the underside. I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. We're going to do reversing at the end as well. So you can see we've got a stitch really close to that edge, and we sewed through the Sailrite on the underside as well. So this creates, once this is folded like this, and this will fold back, this creates a nice flange so that you almost get a perfect L shape. Your cover material would go here, and this would go against the deck. Now we're going to bind from here all the way around to the other end to there. But we need 90 degrees, does not bind well. So we're going to take our scissors and we're going to round this to a pleasing look like that. We'll do that here. That's through the Sailrite material, not the flange. And we'll do that obviously right here as well. Now we're going to fold this back, and I'm going to put my binder, and with my binding, 1-inch binding, so it goes over the edge just a little bit, so it's basically going to be invisible. It'll look like it runs right off into the canvas. And what I want to do is I want to sew, not on that flange, so I want to move the flange and the binding so the needle goes right into that fold that we have, so right there, okay? It's okay if it's a little bit in it, but not too much. Okay, so now I'm going to lower my foot, and I want to do some reversing here, like that. And we got to go around this corner. Smaller stitch length makes it easier to go around the corners, so than a longer stitch length. That's why we reduced it a little bit. Same principle that we showed before. I'm going to sew down this side, and when we get to the end, we're going to do the same technique. We're going to stop sewing right at that crease or fold. And then we're going to cut it. So watch, I'll show you. Twist, 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 come on. Right there. And I'm going to do some reversing. Okay, perfect. We got that done. Now we take this out, and I take my scissors, and what I do is I cut this just a little bit long so it kind of disappears into the top, because the top will be sewn right there. And then I cut this side, and then I'm going to take it over, and I'll carefully touch the ends of this by folding this back with a hot knife just to seal the end of the binding on both ends. Nice, look at that. That's going to make a great flange. So when we're done, this flange that goes against the deck is only 1.5 inches in width. The idea is, like this one should be 1.5 inches too. Yep. The idea is you can get the fastener closer to the edge, which helps to prevent that sharp crease, because this is where we pattern to. And if your fastener were out here, then you'd get this. So even this fastener is a little bit too far from that edge. It really should be over here like that, so then you get that really nice edge. Okay, so now what we do here is we put double-sided tape on the back side of this, okay? And we're gonna fold down to that stitch. And this just temporarily, well, it permanently holds it in place, but while we sew it onto the top. So let's do this. And we're gonna fold to the stitch, not over the stitch, because we want this to be a hard transition. So see how I'm right next to the stitch? That way, when this folds back, it basically becomes more rigid. You don't want to go all the way to the end. Do this all the way down. Now I put double-sided tape here, and we can baste it to our application. Again, if you had a lot of curves, you'd make them similar to this, 3 inches wide for each fastener, instead of 19 inches for this. Same measurements for the width or depth. Peel off the transfer paper. This is our flange. This is the outside surface. So this goes right like this. And you want this binding, that's why you do the binding first, to be right up against, we're going to start the flange right there, that fold. So I'm hiding that entire thing. And this looks really awesome. I know this stitch length is smaller than this stitch length, but that's because we tried to do curves, and we had 2 curves and I wanted to make it easy. Okay, so there, see how the binding kind of just disappears in the top? Look at that, it's almost a vertical application for fasteners that are not on a vertical surface, but a almost horizontal surface. So we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew right on top of these stitches, doing heavy reversing at the beginning and the end. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle in the center position here, and I'm going to start sewing a little bit out of the flange, just so that it's nice and reinforced there. And we'll try to sew on top of the previous stitches. Again, I'm going to do heavy reversing here. I don't want this to come up. And then once I get past that, then I'm just going to sew almost on top of my stitches. I'm not right on top of it, but it's not a big deal. Now make sure it stays basted down. See how it's moved a little bit? So before you sew it, check it.
In this chapter, we're going to sew the other half of the center pocket zipper to the top panel.
So the intermediate pocket, or the pocket for the that goes over on the top, would fold over like this. Now you're going to have a lot of shape here because there is a lot of shape. So you're going to have to flatten this out. Now we're not going to baste it so it's totally flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it in a few key spots with it flat, and then I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch in because we want excess pocket. So let's just do this first. I'm not basting it to that locale, but we'll do this all the way along here. Nice and flat. So I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch inside of those lines so that we can create more space for the tubing so that it doesn't make a hump. I peel off the transfer paper of the 1/4 inch seam stick I put on the flange of the zipper now, and I'll start kind of in the center, and we will baste to those marks like that, and you notice that creates bulk for that tubing to sit in, and then the top won't be so rigid like it will be on the ends. Okay, so baste away, and then let's take it to the machine and sew. Make sure you press down hard. We're going to also fold this under, so this kind of reinforces that end a little bit. We'll move the slider once we get to it. Okay, my needle's in the left position. I'm sewing 6mm straight stitch. We're going to sew as close to that box as possible. I don't want to put a roping zipper foot on, and do some heavy reversing there. And we're going to sew right next to those teeth, making sure that it stays bound where our marks are, because we don't want it to come loose. I got to lift up this glass so I can get it in there. Pretty easy. Okay, so now we're coming up to that slider, so I'm going to bury my needle, and let's get a little closer. Right there. Bury the needle, lift the foot, hold on to the other side so it doesn't come unbasted, and if it does, we'll rebaste it. Move this past, hopefully. There we go. And make sure that it's basted nice and straight, which it looks like it is. Lower the foot, don't forget that. And sew to the end, and do some reversing. Oops. Guide it. There we go.
Dodger kits come with snaps and twist lock fasteners. We're going to install the fasteners now.
We slid the awning rope into the track, which is the first step, and then we just zip it on to each one of the bows. So we have it erected in the frame here. We don't have any fasteners on it. It's actually not too bad. If it were a little bit loose or loose in the front, what you could do is you could release some of these, like the rigid support, and you can actually push it down or push it up. And sometimes you can even release this and actually reposition it. You can get more length by releasing this screw and then actually pushing the tubing out, or obviously cutting the tubing. But we've got a pretty good fit here already. It's pretty tight around the top, so I think we're ready for fasteners. I don't think we need to do much adjustment with the frame. So because we have awning rope in the front, we want to work for fasteners from the middle to the starboard or port first. So this is the closest attachment point, and we have lift the dot fasteners with the 2-screw base, which they don't make anymore, unfortunately. They only make it with a single stud. So the way to get this position is I'm not going to use the old marks, because now that the top's done, we want to find the new marks. And the way to do that is to fold the material. We really should start with this one first if we can get my hands back there, and then pull the top to it, which actually does look like it's right where that mark is. So that mark's probably good, but we want to look to see if it looks tensioned well, and I do believe that would be a good position for that. So now one way that you can basically do this without installing all the fasteners is to actually use this cutting pad and put it underneath, and then use the Sailrite hole cutter. This is the number 1 size, and you can actually position fasteners by doing this. So I think that's a good spot. We don't have to remark it. Let's go ahead and put a hole through it. Okay, so there. So now what we can do is we can position this. Hopefully it's in the right thing. Yeah, that's gonna look good like that. So we'll go on the inside, and I'll actually use one of the fasteners. This is the lift the what is it called? Lift the dot, okay, fastener. And we can put this on backwards. I'll show you on the inside. So we have the stud, and it's going through the hole, and then this is just temporarily going to hold it in place so that we can put one fastener in at a time. I'm going to push it on, then you can see what it looks like. So see, like that? See, it's backwards. Nice. Now we can concentrate on the next one here. We might have to take that off to drill the hole, but we'll see if we don't have to. The nice thing is I don't have to install these on the boat, which is very hard to do. I can just put all the holes in there, and we have the position of all the fasteners. Okay, so it looks like the next one's actually falling just in about the same spot. So let's see if I can drill that without removing the other one. I think I can. Just want to make sure I don't cross any of the fabric over. Yeah. I don't want to go through a layer of fabric that I don't want to go through, and I don't want to go through the deck. Nice. And we'll do the same thing here. So now we have this flange that we made for almost vertical or horizontal surfaces, and I'm going to pull on the flange until I get optimal shape here for this next fastener, and that looks like it's about perfect here. I'm going to put a hole right about here. I could put it there, but I think this is a good spot right there. So I don't have any fastener here. This is a fastener we're going to have to install. This time I'm going to use the other side of the cutting pad. We're going to go close to this edge because we want the fastener to hold the material down. Okay, so now I can remove this. Now I'm going to take my grease pencil, which I have a yellow one, and again I'm going to position, and I'm going to look at the top to make sure that it looks nice, because we can go in and out like this. You can go anywhere you want. I think that looks pretty good right there. And I'm going to put a hole or a marking on the deck. Yeah, you can see it. It might be better to use a black, but I didn't bring a black out. Scribe ball would probably be better, but I can see that mark. So we're going to be using the twist lock, and it won't really go through a single hole. It actually needs an oval. So the way I deal with that is I just cut a little bit wider hole for the oval. So watch this. So I'm just right beside the other hole, and I just want to go halfway. Now it's an oval, okay? So this will hold into place by going through like that, and then we can actually twist it. I know the eyelet's not installed, but again, we're doing preliminary fasteners. We'll install them on the loft table. So is that still the right location? I think it is. So is it curved slightly? Yeah, it has a little bit of an angle like that. So I'm going to try to duplicate that right like there. So I'm going to mark the holes. So I went ahead and went inside and got my scriball pencil because it's just so much easier. So there's where we want the fastener. There's the angle that we want. We'll mark the holes. There we go. Let's see, will that, yeah, that's going to be great. Okay. This is the stainless steel screw that we're going to be using, and you need the drill bit to obviously let a little bit of the thread show from side to side. So it all depends on the fastener that you're using. We'll tell you in the screen below what this is because I can't read the marking on it, but this one's about perfect. So now we're going to take the screw and we're going to put it in the base of the fastener, and we're going to mark the depth that we need to drill, which is right there, and we want to go all the way to the point. So I'm going to put a piece of tape right at my fingernail, because I don't want to drill deeper than I have to. So now we're going to drill through, and we're going to stop. If you have a drill stop, that's even better than a piece of tape. Oof. Okay. To help prevent spider cracking, we're going to chamfer the hole slightly with a chamfer bit. Doesn't take much. This is butyl tape, and it's a great bedding compound. It's a lot better than silicone, because silicone can collect dirt and be very difficult to get off of your deck once you're done. So we're going to take both screws, and I'm just going to put it at the close to the base and wrap it around the screws. That's way too much, but it'll seep out and it's easy to clean up. So, okay, we have it on both. And I like to hand drill or hand screw these in, because if I don't have a big enough hole, I can kind of feel the fiberglass, and I can drill a bigger one if I need to. Yeah, it seems to be going in pretty good. No serious cracking. So I think we have the right drill bit. And we want that butyl tape to just squish out between the base. So I'm doing it like you do lug nuts on a car, a little bit at a time on each fastener. And that's how you install the fasteners and bed it appropriately with butyl tape that's available from Sailrite. Okay, now let's clean up the butyl tape. I'll show you how easy it is. Just take a wad of butyl tape and dab around the fastener, and it takes up the excess beautifully. I could do it more, but that's good enough for me. Love it. Now we'll position this and we'll do our next fastener. So I'm not going to put 3 in here. I think it's just overkill. We got a nice long flange, and I mean, you could if you wanted to. This one's almost vertical. If I come down like that, there's a hard spot up here. So I'm actually probably going to do something like that. I might actually go down there and actually put that one in first, just so that I can get that taut. Then I can see what this looks like. This used to have the lift the dot here, but somebody stepped on the end of it and it broke off. So we replaced it with a locks fastener. And this locks fastener has a button that snaps on like that, and you just pull it and it comes off. This locks fastener matches the old base of the lift the dot. The twist lock does not. So that's one of the reasons that we used it here. So we're going to put one on the starboard and port side at the corners only, because these don't come in the kit. They're sold separately. So I'm going to tension it like this, and that's probably where I want to put it based on what I'm seeing. And I'm going to go ahead and mark the underside with chalk right there. And I'm going to again use the #1 Sailrite hole cutter, and this time we'll just go through on the side that's marked right there. Oops, gotta go a little bit harder. There we go. And we can position it like that. And if I find, yeah, okay. So we can position it over and just temporarily put that on to position it. There we go. So you can see what we've done here. We put one of these on it to hold it in place. And now we're going to do the other side in the same manner. Okay, now we have the starboard fasteners in place, though we have not installed the fasteners port side. We also have these the tail, where we're going to be installing a snap later on, but we'll do that after the fasteners are installed. We did forget to put a strap in the front window, so we have to do that. So we're going to take the entire Dodger off, and we're going to go inside and install all of these fasteners. This is the lift the dot hole cutter. And the lift the dot goes down so that you can peel it up. Now it doesn't go on this side because this is the outside. This would go on the underside here, but we can still cut a hole through this side. And if you look at the fastener on the underside, the side that you lift, the prongs are closer together. So the prongs over here are the bottom side. So they go towards me. And you want to position it by looking. This hole should be basically, the hole right through it should be horizontal to the edge of the fabric, or parallel, I should say. And you want that right where that hole is. Now the way I do this, I do it with a rubber cutting mat, not the one that's solid like that. And then I pound with a hammer or mallet so that it sinks down deep. And there you have the outlets. So this would go on the underside for this application. Most of them don't do this, but this fastens from the inside for our application. So let's get it through like that. There we go. The prongs are up. So this is the backing plate. It says dot on it, and I know that it looks weird, but it actually goes up like that, so the dot's readable. And then you can take a screwdriver or this tool. This tool really works great. It's available by Sailrite. It has a end that allows you to basically bend these over for both lift the dot and twist lock fasteners, and you just do that. Okay, so this is an odd one because this is obviously on the other side. I'll show you what one looks like that we usually put in. Now we're going to put a second one right here. These are twist locks, so let's do a twist lock next. So this is the hole cutter, which has been used a lot for multiple projects for the twist lock fastener. And the holes again will go parallel to the edge that you're usually making, and that's the same position as our fastener. And we're going to install it close to that edge up here, right over that hole we made. Use a rubber cutting block to prevent damage to the prongs. If you use this, the prongs may break. Then we take the twist lock eyelet. Now, if you don't have that hole cutter, you could use a razor blade and cut the prongs for this. You just mark it and cut the prongs. Bend it over, and then in the kit, these eyelets are included. And you bend the prongs over with a screwdriver or this special tool, which does it pretty quickly. All right, there it is. So this is the locks fastener, and just inserted in that hole. It's a little bit on the snug side, but you just push the fabric around. And then you take the backer plate and put it up so that the text is up, made in Germany. And then there's a key. Obviously this fastener doesn't come in the Dodger kit, and nor does the key. And you just rotate this, and eventually it bites into the top of the canvas. So it'll feel like it's on, but it's not until it actually comes up to rest against the canvas. So keep turning until it becomes hard to turn, and it's up against the canvas completely. Okay, these are nice fasteners, and they don't release unless you pull up the button. So there's the locks fastener.
The smiley face window opening rolls up, so we need a strap. We're going to show how to install that now.
Okay, we're going to put a webbing strap on this. You could put 2 on it, but we're just going to put 1 on it. 20.5 is the middle, so it's right there. We're just going to use our chalk to indicate where the middle of the window is. So I flipped it so that we're looking at the inside, and I unzipped the window, and I'm going to put my cutting pad at the middle position. I also marked this side at the middle, so you can see that the zipper's up. And I'm going to take my polyester webbing, white or black, depending on the color of canvas, and I'm going to fold it so it's got 2 layers, and it's less than 1 inch. And I'm going to put it right over that middle spot. We're going to put the snap right at the edge of that, so it's basically really reinforced well. And I'm using an 1/8 inch hole cutter. And that goes through both the webbing and hopefully the canvas. Let's see if it did. Oh yeah, it worked beautifully. Okay, this is the button, Sailrite button, and it's a 5/16 inch barrel, and it does come in the kit. You get 10 of them, even though you probably won't need that. So this is our webbing that we put a hole through, and I want the button to be on the side that doesn't have the fold, so like that. Okay. So now I flipped over the glass, so we're working from the outside because the button goes on the inside. So now that we have a hole in here, I just push the barrel through like that. And I'm going to just use this inexpensive tool. Concave side goes up. This is the side for eyelets. So this is the button side. We're going to put it underneath that snap like that, so it's on the base. The socket goes on top, again included in the kit. And we'll give it a few blows with a hammer or a mallet. Best way to determine the length of the webbing is to roll the window up tightly, like so, all the way to where you want to snap it, and then take your webbing and go over it like this, and then include a little bit for a fold. So we're going to cut right about there.
Later, I found the webbing wasn't long enough. I should have added 2 more extra inches.
And you want to do this with a hot knife. We can do it with this pretty nicely, which seals the edge. Okay, so this is going to go on and snap like that, which means that we're going to have this fold over like this, and this will be the stud side. Mm-hmm. Okay, with it folded, we're just going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to use a hole cutter. This is the Sailrite drill hole cutter. Nice. Eyelet goes through, stud goes on top. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is standard length. Go through there. There we go. And stud. And now we use the other side and position the eyelet on top. Nicely done. There we go. All right, now let's put a snap on it so that it doesn't dangle in the window. So now, if we want the strap not to dangle in the window, we're working on the inside of the Dodger right now, so we flipped it. I'm going to put it up here into the pocket area, and I want it a little bit loose so that I don't interfere with anything shapely. And And I'm going to go just a little bit above the tubing, which will be down here. And we're going to put a snap only in the pocket. So I'm going to put my cutting pad down here. You don't want to go through your canvas here. And I'm going to just put this scrap Sailrite, which I cut. You get Sailrite in the kit. That'll just kind of reinforce the snap. Not that it's a heavy use application, it's just to hold the strap so it won't be under any load. So there we go. Okay, we put the button, this is the standard height button, and then we put our reinforcement here, and then that goes through here. And I left my cutting pad under there, and then we put their socket here, and we do the same thing again. The final stage is cleaning the clear vinyl, and there'll often be a lot of residue on it, so I use a microfiber towel and 3M specialty adhesive remover. Unfortunately, this stuff costs a fortune, but it actually is recommended by Strataglass to remove any kind of residue. So just put it on your rag, don't put it on the glass, and then you can go over it. It is amazing how much of this stuff is actually the double-sided tape, and it cleans it up pretty good. And after this is done, then we're going to go over it with an iMark protective cleaner. Now we're using another microfiber towel in the iMark Strataglass protective cleaner, and we'll spray it onto the microfiber, and we'll go over both sides of the clear vinyl with this. And then we're going to take it out to the boat. Okay, so the locks fastener snaps on like that. The lift the dot goes on like this, and then to take it off you just do this. This is not included in the kit. Twist locks go on like that.
On the aft pocket at the ends, we're going to install snaps onto the frame.
All right, so now we have this portion. The reason we stopped the zipper here is that the pocket can take up the wrinkle instead of the top. And you can take this and see how we've got some excess fabric here, and I can pull this until I get a really nice pleasing look here, and then we could put a snap in here. So it looks like that would probably be the best. You can mess around with this a little bit to find out what really makes your canvas look best. Apply too much tension and you might get more hard spots, but I think that looks pretty cool. So I'm going to put a snap right here. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to put it so that it's basically going port to starboard, so right in the edge of the canvas. Yeah, that'll work well. So I'll move that out of the way. We want to drill through this, and so I'm going to make a dimple in the stainless with a spring punch. So I do this about 6 to 8 times, which should give me a good dimple so my drill bit doesn't wander. There, look at that, beautiful dimple. Onto the drill, but I'm going to put some cutting oil just to prolong the life of the drill. One bad thing is if you drill through your canvas, so be careful when you're doing this. We're going to drill through the tubing, not going through the other side. Okay, this is a standard riveting gun. We sell it, and the Sailrite Snap-Right surface mount die. And the kit comes with stainless steel rivets that we'll put in there. And then it comes with obviously the stud, and you want to seat that down. There's a rubber O-ring so that it's nice and flat like that. Doesn't have to be perfectly flat, but almost flat. And then we're going to put this through the hole, and then I'm going to put my thumb here on the end of the tool, which helps the mandrel not to fly out in my face, and it also applies pressure down on the snap on the surface that I'm applying it to, and depress the lever until the mandrel breaks. Right there, it's a stainless steel fastener, and look at that, it doesn't even roll. Beautiful installation. So now again, I'm going to take my tail, and I'm going to make sure that it looks the best it possibly can, and it's taut but not so tight that it actually causes wrinkles. And now I can feel where the fastener is. I like it there, and I'm going to put it right there. Okay, I'm using the press and snap tool. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I'm going to put the barrel of the button over here. This is 11/64" barrel, and this is a hard action socket, so it's harder to unsnap, and that comes in the kit. And then just depress the trigger right over that spot with the press and snap tool, and your snap is installed. And we'll do the same thing on the starboard side.
We're going to add a starboard and port window to the Dodger next.
We decided that it would look better and give better visibility with windows on the side. So I didn't show it, but I came out here with my chalk and I said, I want the window to stop basically level with this. And I thought it would look good like that and then stop right about here. And I think it really came out great. Now, we are going to go back in the loft and show you exactly how to put this window in, but it's done exactly in the similar way that we did the front window. We decided on the boat that it would be best to have another window here. This is after all the fasteners are put in and such. And I want it to be even with this top of this window and basically come down to this peak here. So I drew it about 3 inches from that window, about 3 inches from the top, and then just made it look pleasing to the eye on the deck. So I drew this while I was on the boat. We did not show it. I took a straight edge and drew this down. So what we want to do is we want to cut a piece of glass that's 1 inch bigger than that line all around the perimeter, because the 1 inch will be taken up in the binding on the underside that we showed here. So as you can see, this is cut 1 inch bigger than those lines, and we're going to base this on. Now this is the outside, and we have to put it on the inside. So where does this go on the inside, since I did not mark it on the underside? So on this side we already installed one, and I really want it to be the same distance from this. So if I measure from the edge of the binding to the edge of the binding, you get 4 inches. So if I come over here to this one and I measure from the edge of this would be the binding, obviously this is the other side, I would want this to be 1 inch over like that. So this is actually positioned right on that line, because I decided to go a little bit further because of the binding here. So I just want to make sure that they're the same, and that should make it the same if this is even with this and if that's even with that. So now to determine where it goes, once that's there, is I take just multi-use pins and I go at the corners and I push it all the way through, so I can flip this around and I can see exactly where each one of these would be positioned. Let's make sure this is straight, like that. And that would go here. And then we'll put a pin up here and up here too. So there's a lot of shape here, but we can work it out. So now I'm going to flip it over to the sharp side. Don't poke yourself. So on the underside, I'm just going to mark with my chalk at each one of those pin locations, indicating the corner of the glass, and then we'll remove the pins. So we're going to base the window to the inside of the Dodger. So I'm going to put the 3/8 inch basting tape all around the perimeter. Okay, so we have double-sided tape on it, but there's a lot of shape here. So I'm basically going to start at a corner down here and match it up with this mark right there, and then I'm going to base this on and try to flatten it out as best as possible to make sure that there's no excess fabric in here, and make sure the corners are lined up, and they are, so we're good. Onto the 1 inch binding, I put double-sided tape on both sides because I really want this to stick well, especially since we've already got a big piece of clear vinyl window in the middle of the Dodger, so this will just help it. So I'll peel it off, and what I'm going to do is just cut it to size just like we did for the main window, and I'm going to hot knife the ends, and we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. So now we have the binding all around the perimeter, and you may be saying, how in the world am I going to turn corners with all this clear vinyl in the way? Well, we're not. We're going to actually sew with the outside perimeter, do reversing at every stop, which will make it a lot easier. Then we can flip the panel and do the same thing over here, reversing here, stop, reversing here, I'll show you. Okay, so I positioned it for this run, and I put my needle to the right, and I'm going to start here at the corner. And again, we're not going to bury the needle and rotate on the buried needle. We're going to just do reversing. So we've got that corner, and I'm just going to go a couple stitches in reverse. Okay, and then we're going to sew up this leg. Remember, we're sewing the outside perimeter first, and then we'll cut out the canvas and sew the inside perimeter. So we'll sew all the way to the corner, and then I'll reverse there, and then we'll reposition the canvas again. Now I'm at the corner, so I'm going to do some reversing here. Okay, we'll take it out and we'll reposition. I moved my needle to the left position, and I scrolled up the clear vinyl to get it underneath the throat of the sewing machine to do this leg. As long as you position things, it's not that hard. This is the outside, so now all we need to do is mark a line 1.5 inches over from our stitch line, and sometimes I actually go a little bit less. It's actually a little bit easier, so I'll just put the stitch a little bit inside the 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches, and so it's right there. And we use our chalk, strike a line on each one of these, and we're going to cut out the middle, and we're going to fold this under like we did with the front window. Exactly the same process.
The Dodger Skin Kit is now complete and it looks great. You can see this Dodger paired up with the bimini in the back. We have a tutorial video on that as well. The list of the materials that's included in the kit is available on the Sailrite website, so you can peruse that. A full list of the tools that we used is in the description below, and you can see links for other projects that you may have seen throughout this video in the description below as well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.